Namaskar. Welcome to another edition of Navavimash podcast. So, as promised, we are going to start a new series called The Indian Political Theory with our guest, Dr. Bijeet Prasantha. And
Namaste.
it's going to be an interesting and exciting series where we are going to revisit the political opinion makers, political thought leaders of modern India. So, Namaste, Bijit.
Namaste.
So before you go ahead and start the lecture, just can you give us an overview, like why it came into your mind to design this lecture for us?
Right. So before we move on to the main lecture, so obviously I will lay out the objective in detail when I'll basically start discussing the main sort of axiom for this lecture, which is that DeAbrahamization is decolonization. But even before moving that, why this title, Indian Political Theory, and also why we are running this lecture series. Um, I mean, it sounds weird that we need to frame something called Indian political theory, um, uh, and uh, and it seems like the title is so obvious that we might have come up with something, I don't know, more controversial or more funnier than this um, mundane, boring name, right, of this lecture series, which is that okay, Indian political theory. But I mean, we got our idea, Bhupenda and I, we got the idea when we watched a lecture by Yoya, right? Yogendra Salim Yadav. So Yoya went to JNU, which is sort of the bastion of these Abrahamic communist uh, narratives, so to say. And there he basically spoke about the need for a Indian political theory. And when he was basically discussing this whole requirement for Indian political theory, he was spot on actually. That part we have to give him, right? So he was saying ki, I don't know how many of you are from Delhi or how many of you went to Delhi, specifically like South Delhi. But there he is talking about Munirka market. So Munirka market is in South Delhi, and so it is near JNU, right? It is in that. So JNU and IT Delhi, those are in this area called Hauz Khas. तो हौज खास के बिल्कुल पीछे जो है उधर कुतुब मीनार है. It is basically the Dera Rai Pithora, राइट, पृथ्वीराज का डेरा जिसे कहते हैं. एंड इट यूज टू बी कॉल्ड लाल किला एज वेल. तो ऑब्वियसली अपना तोमर जो डायनेस्टी था, प्रोबेबली दे मेड this Lal Killa in this Dera Rai Pithora as well as the currently where the Lal Killa is. Um, but the point is that he's saying ki, okay, so there is this JNU, but if in JNU you are given a map of let's say Manhattan, which is in New York, and if you go to Munirka and then you try to sort of walk in the lanes in Munirka market with the map of Manhattan, and if you start to sort of compare the map of Manhattan with the map of Munirka, you are bound to be confused, right? You will definitely be confused. It is better to not have a map at all while roaming around Munirka than having a map of Manhattan, so to say. And it is a good analogy, um, because in the context of Indian political theory, if you see what is going on in Indian academia mainly in the area of social quote unquote sciences, um, is that key they this part of academia, the social science in India, these departments, they are actually importing wholesale the all the narratives, all the words and jargons, wholesale from these European sort of and American social science departments, right? Without understanding the historical context or the जियोग्राफिकल यू योया की जय हो, राइट? उनके लिए ही बना रहे हैं, उन्हें खुश करने के लिए. होपफुली ही विल बी हैप्पी व्हेन he goes through our analysis. Am I visible? In what sense? I mean, yeah, we can see your chat. Anyway, तो हम लोग क्या डिस्कस कर रहे थे कि हाँ, बेसिकली आई मीन द यूरोसेंट्रिक जो व्यू है, यूरोसेंट्रिक वर्ल्ड व्यू जो है, द प्रॉब्लम is that the Eurocentric view of the world, or the Eurocentric worldview, uh, basically has been exported to the United States. And you know, the white people in United States, they sort of attribute their lineage to this Aristotle, Plato, and then Christianism and all. So they basically try to draw their lineage from there. So obviously they draw their ideological lineage also from Europe. And in Europe, so there was initially this whole pagan, pre-Christian, Gentile Greco-Roman philosophy, which basically came up through the dialectic in this place called the academy. The academy was built by the great Plato. तो एकेडमी में जो डिस्कशन चलता था, मतलब ऑब्वियसली थीसिस, एंटीथीसिस एंड सिंथेसिस काइंड ऑफ, जो जिसे कहते हैं इन हेगेलियन टर्म्स, कि एकेडमी में फॉर में अगेंस्ट, so for a narrative, against a narrative, and then when you fuse them, you come up with something called synthesis, right? They used to believe that is probably the real narrative when you put dialectic on a single narrative. So ये जो आइडिया है कि बेसिकली एकेडमी में जो जिस हिसाब से फिलोसफी या फिर सोशियो पॉलिटिकल टॉपिक, द वे द ग्रेको रोमन फिलोसोफर्स यूज टू अंडरस्टैंड दीज टॉपिक्स, तो वहाँ पे दैट एक्चुअली ट्रांसपायर्ड deep into the European society, to the extent कि Christianism even had to sort of you call it appropriate. So they had to appropriate these philosophies in their structure. You know that Christianism is basically, it's a superstitious death cult, right? In the Greco-Roman philosophy, people like Cicero gave a template, and as per that template, Christianism actually falls into the category of superstitio, unlike religio, which is the cosmic order, which also sort of connect the cosmic order to societal and human orders. Okay, but superstitio used to be subversive, used to be deceitful, hideous, and obviously unscientific, right? So Christianism initially, and even now, it is a superstition, but over time it has appropriated a lot of Greco-Roman ideas, and in spite of that, because ideas such as apostasy used to be punishable by death, Christianism being a cult, it believes in conformity, it believes in homogenizing the society. So uska asar fir it actually affected the the freedom that the Greco-Roman civilization used to enjoy, and it affected the almost 1500 years of the great European civilization, the so-called Roman civilization. And फिर उनके in their history एक Renaissance आया, right? There was a Renaissance, and then the Europeans, they talk very proudly about it. But then the problem with Renaissance philosophy is that much of it is actually Christian apologist philosophy. ठीक है? So obviously they had some requirement, and as per that they sort of molded their philosophies. और उस हिसाब से फिर I will discuss it in even more detail with historiocentricity and everything. बट द प्रॉब्लम इज, ये जैसे होता है ना कि एक रेडीमेड बना के खाना परोस देना, राइट? कि विदाउट थिंकिंग कि क्या चल रहा है, बिकॉज क्रिश्चियनिज्म डजंट हैव एनी डेप्थ, एनी मोर डेप्थ देन any other superstitious death cult like Islam. because they lack the depth of a natural convention and natural traditions. Obviously, the best they could deliver was apologia, right? And apologism, so to say. So obviously there were a large number of anomalies which still exist in Christianism as a ideology, or the civilization that it tried to sort of conceive and it tried to build up. So वहाँ पे, because there are many anomalies, so European civilization itself suffers from those anomalies of Christianism. And then when it is trying to export it to other, let's say, to the US or to Latin America or to India, to, so to say, quote unquote, South Asia, or to China or Japan, basically they are exporting those anomalies. Okay, forget about the, I mean, to that additionally there are this context of geography and history, because the history and history of Indian civilization, for example, it is drastically different from the history of European civilization and how it evolved over time. It is different than Chinese civilization, how it evolved over time. I mean, for example, Chinese civilization is more correlated to the Indian civilization, the Indic civilization, the Bharatiya civilization, than it is to the European civilization. Similarly, for Japan or any other Asian civilization. Similarly, Latin American civilizations. Those are more close to pagan civilization than these sort of Christian civilizations. So because the history is different, and moreover even the geography is different, right? Even geography matters when you talk about different, let's say, ideologies or different evolution of society, right? In the evolution of society, it matters that the geography matters. So for India, you have the Great Himalaya, right? And Himalaya, for example, has played such a great role in forming the Indic civilization, right? And its values and traditions. And then in India, there are so many other places, so many rivers. You have Vindhya, Satpura, Aravalli, Western Ghat, Eastern Ghat. You have these great rivers like Ganga, Sindhu, Brahmaputra. So everything has played a role. The whole sort of India, because it is a tropical region. It used to be full of, like, plantation. There used to be deep jungles, even in Punjab and all those areas, to the extent that when, for example, I think Taimur Long, right, as late as that episode, late 1400, when Taimur Long is trying to invade India, he's talking ki there are many hurdles. One of them is like it has deep jungles, big rivers, and all these things, right? So obviously, all these things, these details of history and geography has played a role in forming the natural convention and natural uh, tradition of a region. But when this Indian academia is importing these wholesale Eurocentric ideas, right? Eurocentric cultish ideas in order to explain our own society. Obviously, it doesn't fit. And then it lead to deformation, right? It lead to various deformation. For example, you start comparing Varna Jati to the race, which is actually very wrong. You start you start playing with the Indian chronology. Uh, for example, in spite of the very fact that the Vedas are talking about Saraswati, specifically Rig Veda, which used to exist um, uh, with that much vigor in around 4000 BC. But then it was drying up gradually, and around 2000 BC, from the geohydrology research, I think it is already proven that around 2000 BC it started to dry up. But then you are dating the Rig Veda from 1700 BC,
Bijit,
which is uh-huh.
I think like when we are discussing the early stages of this lecture series on Indian political theory, I think a very important question is raised. I think in the chat also we are seeing some good points which we've been given. So let's discuss this for a few minutes. Actually, it's a good, very
Mhm.
important point, which actually uh, gives us a lot of other perspectives. So,
Mhm.
Hindu Vichadhara Didi is saying, we often complain about de-Abrahamization, but don't you think we should also focus on earning and creating wealth to counter their power, much like China does?
Right.
Okay, and
So,
let me actually also give a counter as well. Actually, so let me share this one. So, Nina is saying, uh, uh, replying to Didi, is that
right,
earning
right,
money without proper ideology will make us useless. Okay.
right,
Now, again, Abhay is saying a very another important point, which is all are related to actually what we are talk. More than money, it's the incentive structure that has ultimate impact. But end of the day, Didi is again saying that incentive without money. So what we are
right.
understanding is that like, and the last point is from also Vyom, incentive towards larger goal needs resources to achieve. Money tab aata hai. Okay,
Right, right. So
let's take.
when we are discussing
Hmm,
all this, now again
hmm,
we are actually putting
hmm,
us in that Eurocentric view
hmm,
of capitalistic world and all these things.
hmm,
To the
hmm,
extent we are thinking, ki, "Arey, maybe these things are coming from capitalism, and you need
hmm,
this capitalistic structure, which is basically Western structure, in order to become rich." Uh, but the point here is key. This is again a narrative. The very word capitalism and the ideas around it, these are narratives, right? I'm not against wealth. I mean, it was not like India was not wealthy when we were not under British occupation. In fact, the reality is opposite, right? It was because India was wealthy, and India was so dynamic, and India was so vigorous in trading, in discovery, invention, in sort of philosophy and all such areas, alchemy, all these areas, right? Those were invented when India was basically a native Hindu sort of Rajya, basically, right? It is precisely because of the fact that India was so much prosperous, and we are going to discuss it in detail in a few minutes. Ki this matlab, now the very fact you are asking this question, it implies something deeply sort of subverted within our own mind, which is because of the fact that Abrahamic historiocentricity has damaged the natural Indocentricity. There are a lot of things, if you sort of try to dig down deeply, and Hindu Vichardhara Didi also knows more than me, कि a lot of things are actually naturally Indocentric. A lot of conventions, invention of calendars, for example, alchemy, for example, then obviously medicines, mathematics, science. Those are actually naturally Indocentric. Okay, mathematics, for example. But and we did that because we
uh,
required to invent those kind of technologies.
yeah, Bijit, that to actually reinforce your point, to just summarize it for the audience. So let's say 2000 years ago, correct? There was no word called capitalism, but we were naturally, by way of nature, by way of our existence, were capitalist, and we were the most wealthiest region on this earth at that time,
By far, yes.
by far, correct? So what you are saying is very, very fine point which needs to be understood, is that historiocentricity. Okay, by importing the narrative of isms, capitalism, socialisms, Islamism, Christianisms, correct, we are falling into the trap of ism based philosophy or ism based thinking thought process, rather than the natural way. We did not had to go and learn Marxism, capitalism, and any other isms to actually become as a world's biggest economy, world's biggest GDP, trading with countries, earning wealth, building structures, building institutions. We did not have to do and learn all these isms. It was a natural way of expressing our who we are as society, as human beings. So this subversion, in a way, in terms of actually putting in our minds the concept that this is capitalism, this is socialism. No, we have to move away from historiocentricity and become natural human beings. What
Right.
we need to do, and this natural philosophy is Hinduism or Sanatan Dharma. Go ahead, sir.
Right. And any native tradition, I mean, philosophy of any native tradition which is specific to that geography and that history. I mean, right? So it's like saying ki rose didn't exist until you invent the word rose. It is like that. And in the similar way, people used to say, "Are Hinduism did not even exist, whatever 500 or 1,000 years ago because you did not have the name Hindu in your text." Are bhai, we had a huge library of things. The very fact कि मतलब अच्छा, so as per you, Hinduism started to exist only after some guy from whatever Iran or some place started to name us, these are Hindus, right? as if कि मतलब शेक्सपियर रोज लिखने से पहले रोज एग्जिस्ट नहीं करता था. And it is deeply a historiocentric matlab approach to judge a history or to judge any society or any system of knowledge. Okay, it is coming from a deep bias ki until unless I don't know it, this thing don't exist. Until unless Jesus doesn't know it, this doesn't exist. Until unless Bible doesn't speak about it, it is a mythology, right? This deeply rooted sort of bias within us, we have to get rid of it. We need to understand that there are natural, and we'll discuss it later in big detail, that there are natural conventions, natural traditions which don't care about our historical interpretations or our narratives or our system of knowledge. They exist by themselves. Okay, and they are natural, and that is the biggest part we need to understand. Okay, nature doesn't need us to sort of act in natural ways. Okay, and it doesn't require our interpretation of nature. So for example, in physics, right, when you in physics people used to say are so let's say there is a specific topic of research. It can be anything. It can be, let's say, superfluidity. Okay. So in superfluidity, when it was being discussed, there were hundred to thousand papers discussing the same phenomena and trying to interpret it. And some of them were giving results, right? Some of them were sort of semi-relativistic. Some of them were completely relativistic. Some of them tried to understand from a purely quantum mechanical point of view. Some of them were using Feynman diagrams, for example, within quantum field theory. But then this guy Feynman himself, he did not use Feynman diagram to explain superfluidity. Okay. So because he knew ki Feynman diagrams are actually perturbative calculations, which mean ki it's a Taylor series wise calculations. And Feynman didn't care about it. Feynman said ki Are, this is a very easy phenomena which I can describe exactly as it is. So I don't need any approximated result. I can find exact results. And it was explaining this thing in a better way. But then to say ki bhai, until unless you don't know superfluidity or until unless it was discovered in the lab, this thing did not used to exist, that's a stretch of human imagination. Okay. So yeah, so India used to be Hindu, and it did not require the word Hindu to be Hindu. Okay, so to say. Right. So we were discussing ki yes, all these isms, right? All these ideas, historiocentric ideas, that were discovered or whatever, framed or formulated or fabricated in Europe and then exported to all other countries. Academia, in India or any other places, they were very quick in sort of gobbling up these ideas, right? These narratives, and then started to sort of do whatever, be prolific in producing papers and creating and crafting and manufacturing narratives. Okay, but that's the problem here is obviously those were deranged, deformed narratives, and those were because they were Eurocentric narrative, and Eurocentric narratives are mostly Christian apologetic narratives. And secondly, the Eurocentric narratives are not that much relevant in Indic context. Okay, we have a different origin of our philosophy. We have a different origin of our society. Much of it is natural, and they are not historiocentric, so to say. And so we don't need European interpretation of our own history in order to become in order to create our own system of knowledge. So that's the main point, right? So obviously Yogendra Salim Yadav is not that much eloquent, and he's acknowledging that. But he is nevertheless talking about the requirement that we need an Indian political theory. We need because Yoya is saying that there are issues and histories and politics which are specific to Indian context, and we cannot borrow Western ideas and language and philosophies to discuss Indian polity. Well, so that's the main point of Yadav, Yogendra Salim Yadav. And now we are going to move on from there because this guy Yogendra Yadav, they are again, even when he is discussing we need to make an Indian political theory, what he actually means is like, okay, we are going to, I mean, because of his political ideas, right? If you see, his political ideas are even motivated by Eurocentric sort of narrative and Eurocentric worldview of India. So when he's trying to say we need Indian political theory, he's saying, yeah, he's basically implying कि you take these Indian kitabs, Indian books, Indian dharmic kitabs, Indian kitabs in local languages, जिसको इंग्लिश में इतना मौका नहीं मिलता. He's literally implying that. Ki, you guys are in academia, you guys are writing in English, but there are this huge amount of library in local languages. So what you should do, you should convert them to English and then try to misinterpret them through the European classes. Old trauma, yeah, Taylor series. याद नहीं करना है. No, Taylor series gets a little complicated when you deal with complex numbers, but other than that, I think it is fine. No. एनीवे, तो हाँ, तो क्या डिस्कस कर रहे थे कि बेसिकली ही इज सेइंग कि वो जो लोकल लैंग्वेज की किताब है वो तो लोग वो बुक पढ़ रहे हैं ना, तुम्हारी इंग्लिश किताब पढ़ नहीं रहे हैं. सो इंपोर्ट दोस बुक्स in English and then watch them. Okay, kill those books. So he's basically implying कि create Indian political theory referencing to those books in local languages and kill these books, kill the spirit of these books, and make them whatever caste centric, make them Eurocentric, make them ratio centric. And this is needed because we need to destroy Indian society because Hindus are getting united based on their Hindutva, which exists prevalently in local language, and it is actually impacting the politics of these extreme radical right-wing organizations like right now Congress, Yogendra Yadav, whatever, I think his Swarajya Party or Aam Aadmi Party or any other local sort of regional parties that survive based on these fractional divisive ideas that Tamils are different than the Aryas, Bengalis are superior than people living by the Ganges in UP and Bihar. Marathis are different than Bengalis. Marathis are different than Biharis because they need to foment these sort of divisive ideas, these sort of fractional ideas. They need the stout and staunch support from these academic people, and that is the motivation that Yogendra Yadav is actually addressing in his speech. Uh, and and as like any other Eurocentric ideas, this is what Yogendra Yadav is actually trying to invent or trying to extract from these academic people are historiocentric ideas. कि यू नो उस बुक में जाके ढूंढो कहाँ पे एक रेस के बारे में या इसके बारे में लिखा गया है, या फिर अगर लिखा भी नहीं गया है उसको मिस ट्रांसलेट करो. दिस इज द इम्प्लीकेशन, right? Because we know this historically, this is how it happened, right? With the interpretation of sati, with the interpretation of honor in our society, this is how they have mistranslated and misinterpreted our text in their own language, in German or English or French language, and then made a huge sort of literature out of those mistranslations and misinterpretations. Yogendra Yadav is now trying to penetrate more into this, because in British rule they sort of subverted the Sanskrit text. Yogendra Yadav is trying to imply that now we have to subvert all the regional modern language text, like regional text written in regional languages. So this is what he is trying to imply, and this is obviously very much it's a very wild plan. But what we are going to do, like we have always done in India, we are going to take a natural approach and not historiocentric approach. We are and more of about it, we are going to take a natural Indo-centric approach, because we are and we have the right, and we can have the audacity, and we can have the privilege of discussing Indian political theory from Indo-centric perspective, because by the very definition of Indian political theory, Indo-centric approach will be a natural approach. Okay. So in this approach, we can use the natural tradition and convention of India, which is I mean, the natural convention of a continuous civilization, which is our Indic civilization, as well as we can take the historiocentric approach. Because if the historiocentrism is Indocentrism, it is very less likely it will lead to subversion. Okay. And obviously, in the context of India, this historiocentrism is going to come only because of the Abrahamic invasion in India. Because the when I'm going to talk about the historiocentrism in Indian history, or in Indian political theory, it is going to be around the genocide of Hindus in the medieval India. Because the history of medieval India is the history of Hindu genocide. And when I'm going to talk about this historiocentric approach, I'm going to mention these sort of historical genocidal events that has happened to Hindus in order to understand those wild plans. Because for thousands of years, since the invasion of obviously since the it started with the invasion of this guy Bin Qasim. So Bin Qasim, for example, he invaded Sindh, and in Deval, what he did, he invaded us, he invaded Hindus, and then he killed sort of thousands of Hindus. He gathered the bones, he crushed them, he crushed all the bones, and he made the mosque in Deval out of it. And I'm quoting this from V.S. Naipaul. V.S. Naipaul wrote a book, Among the Believers, an Islamic Journey, and he's talking about this mosque in Deval. This mosque, which was founded on 712 AD or 714 AD, anytime between 712 and 714, it was the first mosque in the so to say, United Aryavarta, which was built out of Hindu bones. So the very first mosque of Aryavarta was made of crushed Hindu bones. Okay, so this is the reality, and we cannot evade this reality when discussing about Indian history and Indian political theory, in the sense that how this history has affected Indian political theory, how it has created zimmi out of Hindu psyche, and through inflicting terror in the heart of these zimmis, Hindu zimmis, how it has affected the Indian polity and Indian socio-political structure by large. Okay. So obviously, so as I have said, ki history of medieval India is the history of Hindu Janavidwans, or so to say, the Janavidwans of native people of this land. Abrahamism over the last 1,000 years has damaged every aspect of a fully functional Hindu society. Hindus did not need Islam. Hindus did not need Christianism. Hindus were very happy with their in their own native land, in their own kingdom. They created a huge amount of knowledge, a fully functional working system, and there was no slavery, there was no torture, and it is found from books and accounts such as Indica, written by Megasthenes. Megasthenes is writing there is no slavery or there is no oppression in India. So when he's writing that, obviously, this is a historical record about India that we must care about. So Hindus were happy, and all strata and all faction of society was happy. So and Hindus did not need Islam in this land. Hindus did not need superstition like Islam or superstition like Christianism. Yet they came, they invaded, they perpetrated extensive destruction and genocides for 1,000 years. They created vacuous socio-political structure and institutions um, to wipe out Hindus of existence. They converted, they looted, they killed, they enslaved Hindus to the extent that we the Hindus, we lost the coherence of our history, politics, geography, philosophy, and social and moral values. So this distortion in the native socio polity of India, when you're going to discuss how this distortion actually happened in the form of Sadasatru, right? We have to invoke this part of the history in order to understand the current socio-polity of India. They also Yoya, people like Yoya and much of academia talk about this whole casteism, for example. Now, casteism, because it has an ism, we can safely guess that it will be an Abrahamic construct. And we are going to prove that. Okay, we are going to prove how this is a binary structure which got ossified and solidified through laws invented by the British and by the Ashrafs, and like ism, cultish ideologies like Christianity or Islam, they had even more like rigorous caste structure than India, and they actually sort of infused Indian society with their own structure, with their own idea of caste. Caste itself is not a even an Indian word, and in the very process of fabricating casteism, they damage the social dynamism of India. Okay, the very dynamism that does not care ki who is at the center, because Indian land, it is a very fertile um, land, and Indian society itself is a very sort of interactive, dynamic society, and to the extent that Indian villages or Indian town, they have the capacity to be independent. They can run independently. They don't need any top-down sort of structure, such as central power sitting at Delhi, but it was imposed upon us. Uh, so this is the distortion that has happened over time, and that distortion was imposed by these Abrahamic powers such as Islam or Christianism, and they came, they invaded. So Hindus didn't need Islam, Hindus didn't need Christianism, Hindus didn't need this sort of whatever ki sarva dharma vada pav, and Christianism, Islam, they are not even dharma, right? Because they are not religion by the very definition, by the very template defined by philosopher Cicero, who was the philosopher when of the same place, of the same Rome where Christianity was expanding. So, by the very template of Cicero, Christianism is a superstition. But you see, the Indian Constitution right now has given, has sort of given the manyata to Christianism or Islam of a religion. Ki these are religion and these are not superstition. This is against the very natural philosophy of humanity, and by forcibly putting this narrative with these are religion, obviously, it may be the court, the law, the order, the norm, the legislation, police, the parliament, it has actually subverted the natural philosophy of this country. So Obviously, this distortion need to be pointed out, and it need to be addressed in this lecture series, because once we know which are the real enemies of Indian polity, of Hindu polity, so to say, of the natural polity of India, it will be easy to us to find out a way in which we can counter them. Okay. So now the next point, why we need Indian political theory from our natural perspective, from our natural native Hindu perspective. Okay. Point two is Abrahamic historiocentricity has damaged natural Indocentricity. What do I mean by that? So I prepared a lecture about it, and I think it will be a good place to sort of bring this up, right? So Indocentricity, I want to actually read a few passages from there. Right. So here I need to start with this point that, so I have already talked about the natural convention and natural tradition against historiocentric tradition, right? So right. So Abrahamism, what is Abrahamism? What do I mean by Abrahamism? Let's start defining these things explicitly. So Abrahamism is a set of political ideologies born abruptly at some point in history to serve petty political purposes. They were invented and instrumentalized to create a mob of special, superior, quote unquote, superior people who apparently deserved more rights than the others. Okay. So even the right to rule, extort, and exploit the commoners, the heathens, the pagans, kafirs, or unbelievers. Now, because these cults, the so-called Abrahamic cults, they were born in datable history and took advantage of specific socio-political crises, they had to resort to historicity and historiocentricity for the existence and politico-theoretical justification of their cults. Right? They need that historiocentrism. Okay, they need that historiocentrism to justify their very existence. And the propagation of these cults had to breed division and widen fractures within society, because it is the vertical split of us and them that could create various camps within a community which would then cease to interact with each other. So in order for Abrahamism or Abrahamic cults to expand, it needed that us and them division, because once you create that different camps, ki this is us and this is them, then you can set up your it is apt it becomes easier to set up traps in which you can sort of trap the others, and bring them to your camp by force, by terror, by deceit, by falsehood, and whatnot. Okay. Now, this inevitably led to a situation when one faction would side with the Abrahamic cult, while the other would stand against it. Right? This ensured that Abrahamism never needed the consent of all mankind. Now, so why I'm saying this? Because when you have a natural order, right, it sort of becomes intrinsic. It becomes an intrinsic moral order. It becomes a spontaneous, humane moral order that naturally get the consent of all mankind. You go to a tribal society, right? They have certain rules and certain restrictions, certain way of life, and it is diverse. I mean, if the geography change, if the history change, those rules also change. But somehow it manages this natural convention, natural tradition. They manage to gather the consent of all mankind, specific to that society at least. But Abrahamism doesn't need that. In fact, Abrahamism need this tussle of us and them in order for Abrahamism itself to thrive. Furthermore, the cults of Abrahamism made it perpetual ambition to replace natural rights and natural moralities with historiocentrism. Whenever any opportunity arose through scientific, geographical, historical, or archaeological finding that could affirm the existence of natural right, natural reason, or natural conditions leading to the evolution of morals, the Abrahamic cults acted hand in glove to suppress those facts and findings with ardent vigor. Right? So Abrahamism, whenever there is a proof ki, okay, this is actually undateable history, this is part of the historical and civilizational continuum of a living, thriving, dynamic society, It has always been the central mission of Abrahamism to destroy those continuum, because Abrahamic ideas themselves don't have the historical continuum. So they need to destroy the continuum of these natural civilizational values in a society. Okay, now I can give you example, right? So when, for example, these guys like the British came here, they started to attack Rig Veda. They started to distort it. They started to distort the very word Arya, to come up with this Aryan invasion theory to create division in this society. They started to divide India based on how one looks, right? Based on the skin color of people, based on the geographical location of people, Arya or Dravida, right? So because they themselves have lost that continuum because of obviously genocide on this in their society perpetrated by Abrahamism itself, they seek to destroy the civilizational historical continuum of other civilizations and other societies as well. Another example, when, for example, this issue with dinosaurs, right? So when the fossils of dinosaurs were found to be older than the mythical biblical age of the earth, because Christianism believes that earth was created in 4004 BC, right? Or when it was discovered that Earth moved around the sun and not otherwise, Abrahamism banished and punished the scientific, archaeological, and astronomical explorers very harshly, all to keep the faith of their lambs intact in the biblical truths. This continuous attempt from their end to suppress the naturalness of theories, reason, knowledge, and societies emboldened them to announce the most brutal lies, such as point one, history teaches us that no natural rights exist. Point two, rights cannot be universalized. And point three, rights need reason to be revealed, which presupposes cultivation of a rational mind. Therefore, quote unquote, savages, uncivilized heathens, pagans, and kafirs can never know them, right? So they are saying ki, okay, you need a certain amount of reason to within you to sort of so that the rights, the natural right can sort of reveal within your own mind and within your own soul. So you need a rational mind, and who will bring that rationality? It is the Abrahamism that will give you that rationality. You need to taste the chaska of Abrahamism in order to grow a rational mind, to understand the history and the civilizational values and rights and laws and orders of different civilizations and of the globe, right, of the earth. So it is them who are going to bring rationality in your mind. So in order to be rational, you have to resort to their framework. It is something that you have to learn from their external scriptures. It cannot, you cannot, it cannot cultivate within you in a very spontaneous way. So in this way, they are basically what they are doing. They are actually denouncing and renouncing the natural spontaneous morality within a man. Okay. And obviously, the reasons behind peddling these two lies are obvious. One is that key for the sustenance of Abrahamism, it need to impose its motivated ideas of rights, truth, and justice upon humanity, right? And then the realization of the variety of notions of right is the very incentive for the quest of natural right. But this so basically it is motivated, right? They are saying that there is no natural right, there is no spontaneous morality, there is no civilizational continuum, and obviously human history is disruptive and all these things. They are saying so that they can implant their own motivated ideas, their external sort of fabricated ideas of history and geography and civilization onto you. Okay. So before that, they need to destroy your own rationality, your own sense of morality, and your own civilizational values. And because Abrahamism is engaged in such distortion, we have to always take the Eurocentric or Abrahamic ideas with a, so to say, pinch of salt, right? तो ये तो पॉइंट है बेसिकली कि It basically, what Abrahamism does, it destroys the natural morality and natural convention, natural understanding with you. So it is the genocide of natural convention that is perpetrated by Abrahamism in your mind. Okay. So then the next point is ki obviously once the this genocide of natural convention creates this, I mean, when you do that, when Abrahamism does this, by so in order to achieve that, what they did, what they actually burned libraries. They actually said ki okay, inquiry or invention. So bidat in Islam is haram. Bidat is what? Bidat is inquiry or innovation in Islam is haram. Similarly, in Christianism also, apostasy is haram, right? They did. There are so many inquisitions, such as Goa Inquisition episode, to sort of curb or destroy, genocide the natural inquiry within a man. And even I think at the age of Justinian, the Emperor Justinian in Eastern Roman Empire, apostasy was punishable by death. Even in Islam, also apostasy is punishable by death. So they established this genocide of natural convention by force, by brute force, by burning libraries, by burning people, by burning culture, by destroying plantations, by destroying the very history, geography, and whatnot. Now, obviously, they had this thing in mind ki if we destroy all these things, if we destroy libraries, destroy the natural memory, that civilizational memory, it will be easy for us to sort of manipulate and sort of propagate our own idea, right? The idea of Abrahamism. Now, the problem is that this genocide of natural conventions, it creates countless anomalies, and it leaves behind abundant traces of sins committed by the Abrahamics, which these petty ideologies tirelessly attempt to whitewash in every corner of the society, right? So, on one hand, the vile motivation to establish homogeneity drives them to absurd claims that the diversity of notions of rights and conventions prove the non existence of natural right. So, basically, because these are homogenizing ideologies, they say कि यार, you look around in the society, सब अपने अपने हिसाब से काम कर रहे हैं, there is so much diversity, everyone is going their own way, there has to be some homogeneous rules, right? So in order to establish this homogeneity, they start these absurd claims that the diversity of notion of rights and conventions, they're saying कि यार तुम्हारा उड़ीसा का कल्चर अलग है, बंगाल का कल्चर अलग है, ट्राइबल लोगों का कल्चर तो अलग है, ट्राइबल ट्राइबल कल्चर जो है वो अलग रिलीजियन है, जो हिंदुइज्म से अलग है, एंड यू गाइस आर सो डाइवर्स, इसमें कोई होमोजिनिटी नहीं है, एंड इट एक्चुअली शोज कि बिकॉज यू डोंट हैव the homogeneity in your convention, it means ki it implies the non-existence of natural rights and conventions. कि इंडिया के अंदर इतना डाइवर्सिटी है, उसका मतलब ये है कि इंडिया के अंदर तो कोई रूल ही नहीं है, इंडिया के अंदर कोई नेचुरल ऑर्डर नहीं है जिससे चीजें चल रहा है, तो हमें ऊपर से थोपना होगा वो जो नेचुरल ऑर्डर है, हमें ऊपर से नेचुरल लॉ बना के तुम लोगों को कॉन्फर्म करना होगा. You guys need some conformity, you guys need some homogeneity, right? And this homogenization is the essence of Abrahamization. Okay. Now, if as if diversity within an ism implies the absence of that ism, right? So यहाँ पे मैंने कुछ कुछ लिखा है, जहाँ पे I am trying to question कि as if लगा के. So it is again a rhetorical long sentence which I anyway want to read here. I hope कि you will be able to retain your concentration for this long sentence. So, on one hand, the vile motivation to establish homogeneity drives them to absurd claims that the diversity of notions of right and conventions prove the non existence of natural rights and convention, as if nature and her components were all painted in the same color, as if diversity within an ism implies the absence of that ism, as if history and philosophy could not coexist and together deepen our understanding of right, nature, justice, or convention, as if philosophy should surrender the right to discuss such questions solely to history and historicism, as if the philosophical elements within a race's historical discourse reduced its entire history to mere mythology, as if rights and justice, being conventional in a society, could therefore have no basis in nature, as if all rights and all justice rested merely on arbitrary communal decisions and thus stood opposed to nature, as if rights and justice were mere social contracts incapable of producing or promoting truth, as if no human construct could possess the dignity of a natural norm simply because the Abrahamic constructs lack such dignity, as if nature and human history were two separate, unmergeable realms only because the subversive cults of Abrahamism cannot merge with nature's beautiful, assimilative organicness. सो यहाँ पे बेसिकली मैं बोल रहा हूँ कि कि जस्ट बिकॉज दिस थिंग इज मिसिंग इन अब्राहमिज्म, दिस नेचुरल ब्यूटी, नेचुरल एसिमिलेशन एंड ऑर्गेनिकनेस, दे थिंक कि यार बाहर के लोगों में भी रहना नहीं चाहिए, मतलब जो जो नेचुरल सिविलाइजेशन है उसमें रहना नहीं चाहिए. और फिर वो बोलते हैं कि अगर हिस्ट्री में थोड़ा बहुत फिलोसफी रह गया ना, अगर हिस्ट्री में थोड़ा बहुत मेटाफिजिकल इंस्टेंसेस डिस्क्राइब कर गया, फिर वो माइथोलॉजी बन गया, फिर तो वो हिस्ट्री नहीं रहा. बिकॉज यू सी इन व्हाट इज द नेचुरल कन्वेंशन से जब तुम एक बुक लिखते हो, यू डोंट टैग इट एज हिस्ट्री और फिलोसफी और दिस आर लेट्स पुराना. अ पुराण कैन हैव इतिहास, पुराण कैन हैव अ pinch of some bit of philosophy, some bit of geography. It just doesn't care, right? It is Puran. It has a part of itihas as it happened. It has some amount of philosophy. Like in Mahabharata, you have the Shanti Parva by Bhishma. You have Bhagavad Gita being preached by Bhagwan Krishna. So it has a bit of everything. But then Abrahamism, this is not acceptable. Because to them, यार इसमें तो कृष्ण अर्जुन को कुछ बोल रहे हैं, प्रीच कर रहे हैं, तो ये कैसे हिस्ट्री हो सकता है? अरे we don't care about whether you call it history or whatever. This is Puran as per our definition, and we are going to treat it that way. We are not going to care whether you are saying कि अरे a history book should be explicitly history book. This is reductionism of Abrahamism, right? कि हम लोग मानेंगे ही नहीं अगर हम लोगों के डेफिनेशन के हिसाब से ये हिस्ट्री बुक नहीं हुआ. And we don't care about your definition, right? तो ये एक पॉइंट है. दूसरा पॉइंट ये है कि हाँ, कि फिलोसफी, एज इफ फिलोसफी शुड सरेंडर द राइट टू डिस्कस सच क्वेश्चन सोनली टू हिस्ट्री एंड हिस्टोरिसिज्म. कि फिलोसफी का अपने आप में कोई औकात नहीं होना चाहिए. फिलोसफी नेचुरल नहीं होना चाहिए. फिलोसफी में कंटिन्यूम होगा, उसका एक नेचुरल इवोल्यूशन होगा, वो चेंज होता रहेगा, ऐसा होना ही नहीं चाहिए. फिलोसफी और फिलोसोफर दे शुड सरेंडर टू हिस्टोरिसिज्म. जैसे अब्राहमिज्म में, क्रिश्चियनिज्म या इस्लाम में होता है कि वी हैव अ फिक्स्ड बुक. ये बुक जो है ये एब्सोल्युटली मोरल है, और इसके बाहर जो है वो सब जानेंगे ही नहीं. ठीक है. सो दिस इज कॉल्ड शब्द प्रमाण इन प्रमाण शास्त्र. दिस इज शब्द प्रमाण की टेस्टिमोनी, कि क्योंकि हमारा जो रसूलुल्लाह है वो ये कह के गया है, या फिर जीसस जो है उसके थ्रू भगवान ने, गॉड ने ये कह दिया है, भगवान तो नहीं है, तो यही यही ओनली, दिस इज द ओनली टेस्टिमोनी ऑफ मोरालिटी. इसके बाहर और कोई टेस्टिमोनी हो नहीं सकता. सो दिस, इसको एटाविज्म कहते हैं. ये जो एटाविस्टिक एटीट्यूड है टुवर्ड्स टुवर्ड्स फिलोसफी, it actually ossifies and it stagnates the development of a nation itself. और फिर उससे जो निकलता भी है, उससे अगर मान लो रेनेसा पीरियड में क्रिश्चियन एपोलॉजिस्ट फिलोसोफर्स निकले, जिसके बारे में थोड़ी देर में बात करेंगे. सारे लोग, जैसे मान लीजिए इमैनुअल कांट हो गया, या फिर ये लॉक हो गया, हॉब्स हो गया, ये सारे दे वर बेसिकली, एज आई प्रूव इट, दे बेसिकली क्रिश्चियन एपोलॉजिस्ट फिलोसोफर्स. उसके बाद रूसो जैसे आया, जो जिसको बोला जाता है द, जिन्होंने फ्रेंच रिवॉल्यूशन को फोमेंट किया था. रूसो वाज सेइंग कि भाई साइंटिफिक सोसाइटी इज नॉट आइडियल सोसाइटी, क्योंकि उसमें उससे उसमें कॉन्फॉर्मिटी नहीं आता है. बिकॉज साइंटिफिक सोसाइटी इज अ क्रिटिकल सोसाइटी. इट मतलब इट डज, इट कैन नॉट हैव कॉन्फॉर्मिज्म. सो दैट्स व्हाई इट इज अ बैड सोसाइटी. ठीक है. सो व्हाट ही इज सेइंग कि भाई जो नेचुरल सोसाइटी है, दैट इज अ बैड सोसाइटी, क्योंकि वहाँ पे डाइवर्सिटी है, वहाँ पे अलग अलग ओपिनियन है. दिस इज रूशो. रूशो मतलब जो जिसको यहाँ पे लोग भगवान मानते हैं. आई थिंक रूशो वाज ऑल्सो द इंस्पिरेशन फॉर जवाहरलाल नेहरू एंड गांधी. ओके, करमचंद गांधी, मोहनदास करमचंद गांधी एज वेल. सो बेसिकली यहाँ पे चल क्या रहा है? द अब्राहमिज्म इज बेसिकली इंपोर्टिंग दिस हिस्टोरिसिज्म इन फिलोसफी. वो लोग कह रहे हैं कि जो हिस्ट्री है उसको हिस्ट्री के हिसाब से मानेंगे, वहां से फिलोसफी नहीं निकालेंगे. बट वो लोग फिलोसफी में हिस्टोरिसिज्म घुसा रहे हैं. So, ये जो डिस्टॉर्शन कर रहा है, ये डिस्टॉर्शन कौन कर रहा है? ये अब्राहमोसेंट्रिक अप्रोच कर रहा है. अब्राहमिज्म थ्रू देयर हिस्ट्रियोसेंट्रिक approach, they are creating this sort of distortion. They are distorting the very uh, the beauty and the assimilation and organicness of natural morality and natural conventions, right? So obviously when Abrahamism began facing questions, अच्छा, फिर ये जो रिडक्शनिज्म है कि हिस्ट्री हिस्ट्री की जगह रहेगा, फिलोसफी फिलोसफी की जगह रहेगा, और क्योंकि पुराण में बोथ हिस्ट्री फिलोसफी थोड़ा बहुत मेटा साइंस है, मेटाफिजिक्स, यू कैन कॉल इट मेटाफिजिकल इंक्वायरीज, राइट, ऑफ माइंड एंड व्हाट नॉट. तो फिर वो इतिहास नहीं हो सकता, वो इतिहास का दर्जा नहीं मिलेगा महाभारत को. तो उसके बाद जो इनका जो जन विध्वंस होता है, जेनोसाइड होता है, उसको छुपाने के लिए दे क्रिएट डिफरेंट इंस्टीट्यूशंस लाइक चर्चेस, राइट. सो चर्च का एक बड़ा काम रहा है फॉर 1000 years आफ्टर 300 AD or so, after Constantine the Great, to destroy the classical pagan literature, Greco-Roman literature, and or to appropriate it. ठीक है, so appropriate it without giving the proper reference and acknowledgement to classical literature. जो लोग फिर जो क्लासिकल लिटरेचर था उसको तबाह करके दे क्रिएटेड दिस सॉर्ट ऑफ अब्राहमिक क्रिश्चियन लिटरेचर. और फिर ऑब्वियसली उस टाइम पे जितने भी जेनोसाइड किए हैं उसको वाइट वॉश करने के लिए अलग लिटरेचर का एक लेगेसी इन्होंने खड़ा किया है. सो दीज चर्चेस व्हाट दे डू, दे वाइट वॉश द क्राइम ऑफ क्रिश्चियनिज्म एंड अब्राहमिज्म बाय लार्ज. उसमें सारे मिल जाते हैं, मार्क्सिस्ट भी मिल जाता है, अशराफ, इस्लामिस्ट, क्रिश्चियनिस्ट, ये सारे मिलके दे ट्राई टू व्हाइट वॉश द क्राइम दैट दे हैव डन टू ह्यूमैनिटी. ठीक है, बट फिर भी एनोमलीज रह जाता है. सो व्हेन अब्राहमिज्म began facing questions and doubts from intellectual of every stratum, it launched a global scam to segregate knowledge in the name of creating specialists in various subjects. Science, philosophy, history, convention, tradition, arts, polity were split apart until they ceased to communicate and develop in isolation within compartments predefined by Abrahamism. Historicism, which emerged in the 19th century, served only to protect the lies and myths constructed by the church. I mean, obviously, it is following the historiocentrism around a mythical figure named Jesus since its inception, the inception of Christianism. And there is absolutely zero contemporary historical record of Jesus from his own time. But it doesn't matter, right? They are creating a false history, and they think कि, through brute force they they will erase all the anomalies of natural history, but they fail, right? That's why they reduce कि डिवाइड एंड कॉन्क्वेट जैसे है वो सब्जेक्ट में भी किया, कि जितने भी नेचुरल सब्जेक्ट है उसको तोड़ दिया, साइंस, फिलोसफी, हिस्ट्री, कन्वेंशन, ट्रेडिशन, आर्ट्स, पॉलिटी, सो दैट they get reduced to different branches and stop talking to each other. ठीक है, तो ये सारे ब्रांचेस क्रिएट करके एक एक करके मारेंगे सबको. So this is what charge has done over time. So anyway, so while the natural conventions of the tribals, kafirs, heathens, pagans, and proletariats were hidden, whitewashed, and weaponized against their own societies. तो व्हाइट वॉश करने के बाद क्या किया? आर्यन इन्वेशन थियरी खड़ा किया कि यहाँ पे इंडिया में किसका राज चलेगा, जो आर्य थे वो बाहर से आए थे, यहाँ पे तो कोई नेचुरल सिविलाइजेशन कभी बना ही नहीं है, कहीं से कोई नोमैड आके यहाँ पे बसाया है, चीज़ों को संस्कृत बनाया है, लिटरेचर लिखा है. तो बाहर से जो नोमैड आया, दे वर नॉट रोमांटिक अबाउट द प्लेस दैट दे केम फ्रॉम. मतलब यूक्रेन जहाँ से आए थे, अभी तो वो जगह यूक्रेन ही है जहाँ से ये आर्यन आए थे सो कॉल्ड. यूक्रेन के बारे में तो कोई उल्लेख नहीं है ऋग्वेद में, बट फिर भी वो लोग वहीं से आए थे. ठीक है, बिकॉज दिस इज अब्राहमिक हिस्ट्रियोसेंट्रिज्म. This is the Aryan invasion theory, which is a crucial part of Abrahamic historiocentrism, that that denies the natural evolution of Indian civilization. So the native communities began to experience internal friction merely to defend the falsehoods propagated by the church and the apologetic knowledge spread by the missionary assisted institutions. This led to countless genocides of the natives, civil wars, societal distortions, political subversions, and creation of countless divisions and boundaries. ठीक है, ये इन्होंने किया है. इन्होंने हमारा मतलब ये जो मतलब समाज को बेसिकली समाज का खून बहा दिया है इन्होंने. समाज का अलग अलग जो अंग होता है उसको पहले अलग किया और फिर पूरे समाज को तोड़ के खत्म कर दिया समाज को. ये एक्चुअली अब्राहमिज्म ने किया है. नाउ सो बट व्हाट डिड अब्राहमिज्म. नाउ आई एम गोइंग टू कमिंग टू द मेन पॉइंट जहां पे हम लोग चालू किए थे. इफ यू रिमेंबर, हमारा पॉइंट ये था कि अब्राहमिक हिस्ट्रियोसेंट्रिसिटी डैमेज्ड द नेचुरल इंडोसेंट्रिसिटी. So, but what did I don't know whether Bhupenda is here. If Bhupenda is here, I can have
I am here.
some
I
sip
am.
of water and then I can. तो तब तक क्वेश्चन ले लेते हैं हम लोग. अभी डिस्कस करेंगे इंडिया के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में कि हिस्ट्री कैसे एक्चुअली जब रेनेसा वाला पीरियड आया व्हेन दे स्टार्टेड टू लुक एट द ईस्ट, उन्होंने पाया क्या, फिर उसको कैसे डिस्टॉर्ट किया. आई एम गोइंग टू give an instance of that history. But we can, I think it is a very good time to take questions if someone has any inquiry or anything.
Yes, we have. I think you need to. Yeah. So let me just take the question. Okay, there are a few
So this
questions.
part is coming, whatever I have discussed, some part of it
Hmm.
is coming in my next book, which is called The Split. But ये जो इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थियरी, इस पे अलग से एक बुक निकालेंगे योया के लिए. ठीक है. और वो जल्दी हो जाएगा क्योंकि वो स्प्लिट वाले बुक से ही हम लोग ज्यादातर उठाएंगे चीजों को. तो ये स्प्लिट वाला जो मैंने बुक लिख रहा हूँ उसी का पार्ट मैंने अभी तक डिस्कस किया है.
Yes, so the question is from Hindu Vichara Didi. So, India was always good at adapting good systems from other nations before invasions. Why can't we adapt positive points from Western concepts?
राइट. नाउ द पॉइंट इज, जैसे हम लोग अभी डिस्कस करेंगे, ये जो वेस्ट का मतलब यूरोप है बेसिकली, राइट. तो यूरोप जब ये उनका सिस्टम बना रहे थे, दे एडॉप्टेड इट फ्रॉम इंडिया एक्चुअली. So this thing was happening simultaneously, just like it happened in the I don't know, Hindu Vichardhara, if you have gone through our lecture on Christianism. So हम लोग को दिखा रहे थे कि जब वो पेगन जो ग्रेको रोमन लिटरेचर था उसको जब वो लोग डिस्ट्रॉय कर रहे थे, साइमल्टेनियसली दे वर एप्रोप्रिएटिंग द लिटरेचर, द ग्रेको रोमन लिटरेचर, टू क्रिएट देयर ओन क्रिश्चियन लिटरेचर. तो एक जगह तो वो पेगन लिटरेचर को वो खत्म कर रहे थे, जला रहे थे, ये कर रहे थे, और एक तरफ क्रिश्चियन लिटरेचर में उस वही आइडिया लाके उसको कोट अनकोट क्रिश्चियनाइज कर रहे थे, कैनोनाइज कर रहे थे, व्हाटएवर, राइट. तो तो वो इंडिया के साथ भी हुआ. दे वर कॉपीइंग इंडियन सिस्टम. जैसे मैं अभी एक्सप्लेन करूंगा, आई एम नॉट सेइंग इट आउट ऑफ द ब्लू. और जब इंडियननेस वहां पे अडॉप्ट कर रहे थे, वो आइडियाज वहां पे कॉपी कर रहे थे, साइमल्टेनियसली दे वर डिस्ट्रॉइंग आवर ओन सिस्टम. Because Macaulay brought that whatever minutes of Indian education, जहाँ पे उन्होंने लिखा कि इंडिया के में कुछ है ही नहीं तो सारे कुछ डिस्ट्रॉय कर देंगे, ब्ला ब्ला, राइट. इनको इंग्लिश में पढ़ाना चालू करो, इनके कोई किताब तो ढंग का है ही नहीं. तो एंड हिस्ट्री एक्चुअली इसका ऑपोजिट है. उस टाइम पे इंडिया में इतना सारा पाठशाला चल रहा था लोकल लेवल पे. इनफैक्ट जैसे सूर्य सिद्धांत आर्यभट्टिया है, they discovered it from a local school in Maharashtra. Okay, so from some place in Bombay province in some remote language. वो बुक फिर पहुंचा वहां के उनके पास. आई थिंक वो कैम्ब्रिज पहुंचा था. वहां से वो यूएस में ट्रांसफर हुआ. यूएस में काफी सारा डिस्कवरीज है जो उस बुक के बेसिस पे हुआ है. ठीक है. देयर आर अ फ्यू थिंग्स ऑन द मीटियोर शावर. उसके बाद वहां से फिर पेपर आने लगा एस्ट्रोनॉमी पे, ये जब आर्यभट्ट और सूर्य सिद्धांत वहां पे पहुंचा. तो ऐसे काफी सारी हिस्ट्री है जहाँ पे एक्चुअली उन्होंने अपना चीज, हमारी चीजें अडॉप्ट करके हमें बर्बाद किया है, ताकि हम लोग हमारा जो हिस्टोरिकल कंटिन्यूअम है वो हम लोग भूल जाए. and we start adopting the Abrahamic historiocentricity, or at least the Abrahamic historic narrative of Indian political theory, so to say.
Yes, so Bijit, we also have a guest. Neener has joined us. Okay,
Namaste.
before yeah,
Namaste,
so before
Vedita.
actually, yeah, before I'll also add a bit to the answer Bijit gave. What Didi is asking is that like whether we were interacting, correct? The ancient Bharatiyas were interacting with the Greeks, Romans, Egypt, okay, and even Southeast Asian nations.
Right.
So we had exported a lot of our knowledge, culture, uh, our arts to those regions. Okay, and the Greeks, Romans, Egyptians, they had their correct. They also developed their own uh, natural morality based technology, arts. All those things were there. So what Didi is saying is that whether currently can we adopt some good things which is coming from the West. Okay, so the answer to Didi's question is yes. And now why yes is important, correct? So we like to, like we all have, a lot of us become Abrahamics in nature, but we think good and evil, black and white. So in that context, we need to understand that the Indian civilization, so the Indian civilization that we see, it it had actually what we'd say, it was already interacting with people, okay, with people of other cultures, faiths, traditions, and we were actually like exchanging information and building our updating our own things. So that was happening before invasions. Now currently we should not, as a civilization, reject any political thought, philosophical thought, scientific thought, just because it is coming from a Eurocentric point of view. We need to actually first like read, understand our perspective, and whatever is there, we need to adopt it. Why we need to adopt it? Because for almost 1,000 years, more or less 1,000 years, Bharatiya civilization culture has stopped innovating post let's say post Shankaracharya, okay, and also let's say post Shivaji Maharaj. So two doyens, two very important figures in our civilization, Shankaracharya, who created a lot of spiritual and also philosophical concepts, and Shivaji Maharaj, who had contributed politically, militarily into the civilizational milieu, the heritage that Bharat had. So apart from these two, we have not innovated enough. So we have become a kind of a stagnant in terms of our approach to knowledge, traditions, arts, culture, and everything else. So yes, we don't have to reject everything which is coming from the Western perspective, the Eurocentric perspective, but we need to adopt and adapt it as per our natural morality, rather than importing wholesale. The point of concern would be correct. What we have called libertarian worldview, that unabashed, naked capitalism, that is something we should not adopt wholesale. We need to learn, we need to incorporate the principles of capitalism, but they have to go to the filter of dharmic perspective, so that they do not destroy our identity, our culture, our traditions. Yes, Vijitda, and to other people.
No, totally agree with that. And obviously, matlab, until unless you start to appreciate your own moral system, your own knowledge system, how can you sort of, matlab, this is impossible, right? कि अभी तो काफी टाइम ऐसे ये भी सुना जाता है कि यार काफी इंडियन हमारे पीयर से ये सुनने को मिलता है कि यार मतलब ठीक है, एक लोकल लैंग्वेज तो हमें पता ही नहीं है, तो लोकल लैंग्वेज में जो भी किताब लिखा गया है या फिर संस्कृत में जो किताब लिखा गया है उसको पढ़े कैसे? संस्कृत तो छोड़ ही दो आप, संस्कृत तो थोड़ा और डिफिकल्ट हो गया, बट लोकल लैंग्वेज की किताब भी वो पढ़ना नहीं था। एंड द फैक्ट इज कि इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज में जो किताब लिखा जाता है, मोस्ट ऑफ देम आर वेरी सबवर्सिव और वेरी डिस्टॉर्टेड, सो टू से, ओके। क्योंकि हमारे सिस्टम तो बहुत दिनों तक रहा नहीं इस डोमेन पे। सो ऑल द पीपल हु आर creating knowledge system in English within India, mostly, at least in academia, they were mostly Eurocentric. तो उस हिसाब से फिर हमने अपने हिसाब से नॉलेज सिस्टम ही नहीं क्रिएट किया। इवन मैं जैसे बोलता हूँ कि डिफेंस या फिर जितने भी इधर जो प्रोजेक्ट प्रपोजल होता है, जो मान लीजिए मिनिस्ट्री तक जाता है, सेंट्रल मिनिस्ट्री तक, वो सारे दे लुक एट द कि व्हाट इज गोइंग ऑन इन द यूएस, वहां पे डीओई पे क्या क्या प्रपोजल गया है, उस हिसाब से यहाँ पे फिर प्रपोजल बनता है। अरे यू सी ना कि इंडिया का स्पेसिफिक रिक्वायरमेंट क्या है। इंडिया का जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल, मतलब आप देखो यूएस का जिस हिसाब से उनका जियोग्राफी है, दे डोंट नीड टू डील विथ लाइक माउंटेन लाइक हिमालय ऑन देयर बॉर्डर। इंडिया पे यू हैव थिंग्स लाइक हिमालय, विच मीन कि इंडिया में अगर कोई ड्रोन सिस्टम आपको डिप्लॉय करना होगा, it has to be in the background of such curvy mountainous terrain. Now uh, उसको अब जब जब फीड करने लगोगे कि उस तरह का बैकग्राउंड, यू नीड समथिंग सम नॉन ट्रिवियल सॉर्ट ऑफ कैलकुलेशंस, यू नो, जो जो यूएस आपको करके देगा नहीं। सो वो नॉलेज सिस्टम यहाँ से क्रिएट करना होगा कि हाउ टू रन ए ड्रोन इन सच कर्वी टेरेन, माउंटेनियस नॉन यूक्लिडियन टेरेन। तो ये जब आप नहीं करते हो ना, तो फिर ऑब्वियसली चीज़ों में डिस्टॉर्शन आता है। आप इनोवेट नहीं कर सकते हो। नेसेसिटी इज द मदर ऑफ इन्वेंशन। यू इफ यू डोंट फील दैट नेसेसिटी कि हमारे समाज को क्या चाहिए, तो ऑब्वियसली आप नॉलेज सिस्टम क्रिएट नहीं कर पाओगे, आप चीज़ों को कॉपी करते रह जाओगे।
Yeah, so we have Ninar and we also have Dharma Sansthapak. So Ninar, first to you. You had a trouble with last time, so go ahead.
Yes. Namaste to both of you and to all the viewers as well. So, on the topic of indigenization, of how we should look at the world, how we should adopt technologies from on and so on, I have I have some points on that. So, first thing is that we must use our own lens always to analyze their thing. What happens nowadays? People are prioritizing Shatru Bodh over Swayam Bodh. But Swayambodh is actually important because otherwise you'll be analyzing the Shatru from the Shatru standards. And that
Right,
you're in that itself, you're admitting that their standard is the universal standard. That is the fault we should not do. So,
right.
coming to the question of, for example, admitting a form of capitalism under dharma, what should we do? So, as per what our religion says, we know about the four purusharthas, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So there is kama, which is desire, and desire of objects, desire of anything in general. And artha is defined as the object which satisfies that desire. So when we speak of capitalism, we are thinking of basically enriching us ourselves with the objects that satisfy our you can say our animalistic desires or materialistic desires in general. So yes, from a like you can say to an extent this is actually a good goal to achieve pursue, but beyond an extent, if you only make the end as capitalism itself, then it has no value because then you become a materialistic creature entirely. What happens above this? We have to basically search for this, or what was I saying earlier? So that
Yeah,
artha
yeah,
which
you.
satisfies our karma,
Artha,
we have to seek it in a manner which is sanctioned by dharma, and that dharma which is defined by whatever our elders tell us, whatever our shastras tell us, and so on. Is sometimes even common logic can be used, and so on. So yeah, this is how I think we should adopt capitalism into our framework and even other ideas. And another thing, in the 1800s, what happened in India was we adopted their system wholesale. not just technology or not just humanities or so on. Everything came from outside, and we were just seeing ourselves in their mirror, basically. We stopped seeing them in our mirror. When we see them, when we start seeing them in our mirror, we'll notice that simple ideas, like, for example, in our education, we divide things between humanities and sciences. This thing did not really exist in our time, though we can make a distinction that technology as a whole was treated as separate, but the sciences and humanities distinction, this is not exactly from our framework. So yeah, I think in general, what we should do is that we should adopt the technologies from the West. In technology adoption, we should always try to look at them with our own mirror, adopt. You can say there are some universal standards to technology, so we can always apply them. But when it comes to humanities or social sciences, there are no universal standards. So we have to apply our own and always see them through that lens. Yeah, that was my point basically.
Yeah, neither. So correct. So this verse we all know from Chanakya, correct, from Arthashastra. It actually reinforces your point.
Right.
So that is the dharmic lens that we need to see. A lot of us, this one more argument. I was having an argument actually on our channel's community post with one person who says that the dharmic principles, the dharmic concepts, the dharmic philosophies, okay, the dharmic way of living is incompatible with our current modern lifestyle. And now that individual is saying, okay, no, to survive in the modern society, we have to let go wholesale everything which dharma teaches us, because you cannot go back to a horse drawn cart and ditch the car. So see, this again, this is the abrahamization of our thought process, where we are saying either or. Okay. But we have the from dharmic perspective is that we pick and choose what we want to have, what we want to incorporate as per our own individual or a societal. As a society, we have an agency to actually learn, incorporate something which is good. But this abrahamization of thought process has happened to our society and as well as to our individuals. So what Nina is saying, correct, absolutely correct, that we have to go back. And and one more thing, Nina. So correct, you talked about Shatru Bodh and Swayam Bodh. See, again, when somebody says कि we need Shatru Bodh first and Swayam Bodh later, that may be appropriate when you are in a existential battle with the adversary. At that time, take example.
Right,
if
right.
tomorrow if tomorrow, so everything has its own contextual things, the way they are applied. So tomorrow if aliens invade us, so at that time, will India, China and Russia say, no, no, we will fight each other, whoever wins, that person will go and fight the alien? Is that logical? No. At that time, our Shatrubodh, the human beings, is going to uh, like become the highest priority, and whatever differences Chinese, Russians, Americans, Indians have, they have to be set aside. So in that context, but that has a context when
By
you
the
are
way,
in
have
a
you seen the movie Look Up? Look Up. There was a movie. I think it was in
no,
Netflix.
no, yeah,
This is
I know the movie
precisely
but
on this
not watched.
idea.
Hmm.
Precisely on this idea. Ki there's a meteor which is approaching the Earth, and then then there is some rich guy who is giving a plan कि वहां से फिर गोल्ड एक्सट्रैक्ट जो भी है मिनरल ये सब एक्सट्रैक्ट कर लेंगे, फिर उसको ब्लास्ट कराएंगे. जब तक ये एक्सट्रैक्ट ना करते हैं तब तक ये कराने का मतलब नहीं है. एंड देन they had their own capitalist mindset, and there were like obviously different opinions, so they didn't destroy it, and then the meteor actually hit the earth, then extinguishing the humanity.
Yeah, see,
Wow.
correct, exactly same way, correct. So like a builder would blindly to make money, they will build buildings everywhere and sell it.
Right.
Correct, Vijay? So that's
Right.
that's how blind humans are, how short
Right.
termism actually works. Correct. A builder would like to like a person who builds road, he would like to build road everywhere and make money.
So you
Because
would not
we are
believe this.
blinded.
You would not believe this. It
Hmm,
was 2011.
hmm,
In my BTech time, right, in IIT Delhi,
hmm, hmm.
obviously there was this humanities department, right? And then in the humanities department, we were giving this. So the professor used to give us notes on which we had to discuss and debate on all this thing. And then I got this. I mean, all of us got this key. Why corruption could be advantageous in third world countries, because then the UPA government was going through this whole corruption, right? So then they gave some weird research paper written by some guy somewhere in some academic journal, where we had to debate and justify corruption कि हमारे जैसे कंट्री के लिए अच्छा है कि कुछ कुछ लोगों को तो पैसा मिलता है, अगर रोड टूट जाता है और एक साल बाद बनना चालू होता है, वो एक्चुअली मतलब एक साल बाद फिर से बनाना पड़ता है, दैट इज बेटर फॉर आवर इकोनॉमी. You see मतलब this is how short sighted and how this sort of how the Indian academy work, right? This is as simple as this कि ये लोग खुद के कारनामों को जस्टिफाई करने के लिए दे कैन गो टू एनी एक्सटेंट.
Yes, Bijit, to actually reinforce your point, correct. So lot of people say by definition capitalism is exploitative. If I am employing you, I would want the most out of your productivity so that it enriches me. That's conceptually that is correct. Correct. If I'm employing you, if I am paying you salary, I would like to extract the maximum out of your output so that it could enrich my company. Now
Right.
that is fine. That's how human nature works. Correct. We want something for ourselves. We want our own house. We want our own something that we own. We say, okay, I own this thing. But
Right.
that's a very short term approach. That is how evolution actually works. But if somebody is going to analyze it, that if I am going to build a building on every inch of land and an ocean on this earth, you will have no place to grow food. So the short termism is something which is a problem. The solution is, from our perspective, the dharmic perspective. What is the dharmic perspective? You do something which actually preserves the nature. It doesn't hurt the environment, the animals, the human beings, so that you are creating a kind of a guardrail, so that your own individual short termism, your own individual greed does not destroy yourself itself. Correct. We have enough nuclear bombs right now in the earth to actually destroy humanity by themselves. So we have built nuclear weapons to actually destroy ourselves. So that's how humans are. So that's why we need the guardrail of dharma to actually make sure that we survive, or else we will kill each other in about minutes. Yes. Dharma Rakshak, the Dharma Sansthapak, you want to have something?
Yeah, I already had my dinner, so I don't want to have something. But namaskar to all of you. Uh, just wanted to put forth my point.
Hmm,
But thanks for offering. Uh,
hmm,
what I was saying is कि अभी चर्चा हो रही थी. आपने कहा था धर्म. एक व्यक्ति इसके साथ आपकी बहस हो रही थी या आपकी चर्चा हो
hmm,
रही थी
hmm,
और वो कह रहे थे कि
hmm.
आज के समय में हमें धर्म की पूरी अवधारणा को ही त्याग देना चाहिए और नए जीवन पद्धति को अपनाना चाहिए. और तो मुझे समझ में नहीं आया कि धर्म को
नहीं नहीं
की अवधारणा
देखिए
को.
मैं I think what lecture we are having, we are actually against it. I don't know who said that. Just to clear my point, when I am saying ki natural tradition, natural convention, civilization continuum and all these things, I am actually saying ki whatever this natural dharma is the natural morality, right? So from that perspective, I'm saying ki, okay, discard the Abrahamic historiocentrism, adopt the natural morality, which is basically dharma as per our Hindu idea, in framing the Indian political theory. So I don't know who is saying that.
नहीं, नहीं, मैं उसी की बात कर रहा था विजिता कि वो धर्म, मैं रिलीजन के हिसाब से धर्म शब्द का प्रयोग नहीं कर रहा हूँ। मैं यहाँ पर वही कह रहा हूँ कि धर्म की अवधारणा। तो मैं फिर से बोलूँगा कि उसके बेसिक प्रिंसिपल पे जाइए। जो धारण करता है वो धर्म है, जो धारण करने योग्य है वो धर्म है, और वो समय और परिस्थिति, देश, काल, परिस्थिति के साथ बदलता रहता है। तो आज धारण करने योग्य क्या है? आज क्या है जो धारण करेगा ये कॉस्मिक ऑर्डर को या रित को जो वेदों में लिखा है? ये ऐसे सोचिए ना,
नहीं
ये
नहीं,
लोग पता नहीं धर्म को रिलीजन मान बैठे हैं पहले तो। और आपके
हाँ,
हिसाब से रिलीजन मैं नहीं कह रहा हूँ, रिलीजन मतलब इब्राहिमिक सेंस में रिलीजन।
राइट,
पहले तो ये लोग वो रिलीजन मान के बैठे, तो इसलिए ये लोग बोलते हैं धर्म का समय चला गया, हमें पीछे नहीं जाना। अरे धर्म पीछे जाने की बात कहाँ है? धर्म तो एक इटर्नल प्रिंसिपल है, तो पीछे कौन जा रहा है? अब
वही
बोलेंगे
बात
कि
है।
रिप्रोडक्शन तो 1 लाख साल पहले शुरू हुआ, हम पीछे नहीं जा सकते, रिप्रोडक्शन छोड़ दो। ये तो ऐसी बात है, वो तो इटर्नल प्रिंसिपल है सस्टेनेंस का। तो ये कहीं ना कहीं लोगों के समझ में एक फेर है, या फिर धर्म की अवधारणा को लोग नहीं समझते कि धर्म जब हम बोलते हैं तो उसका अर्थ क्या है। और हमें ये बार बार अपनी चर्चाओं में स्पष्ट करना होगा, कोई भी चर्चा हो, रिलीजन के लिए धर्म का प्रयोग ना करें।
राइट,
धर्म इज नॉट रिलीजन। जब भी रिलीजन का है हिंदी में विशेषता, तो उसको मजहब कहे, मत, पंथ, संप्रदाय कहे, धर्म ना कहे।
और अगर
ये
धर्म को
सबसे
रिलीजन
पहले।
बोल रहे हो, अगर धर्म को रिलीजन बोल रहे हो, फिर क्रिश्चियनिज्म और इस्लाम को सुपरस्टिशन बोलो। इफ यू आर
हाँ,
एजोर्टिंग टू दैट फ्रेमवर्क, रिलीजन वाला फ्रेमवर्क, तो वो फ्रेमवर्क ओरिजिनल क्या था? उस ओरिजिनल फ्रेमवर्क में तो ये रिलीजन थे नहीं ना, क्रिश्चियनिज्म एंड इस्लाम। तो उनको सुपरस्टिशन कहो। फिर अगर हिंदू रिलीजन कह रहे हो, फिर ये सब सुपरस्टिशन हो जाएगा। अगर अपने आप में रहना चाहते हो कि हिंदू धर्म है, फिर ठीक है, रिलीजन को बोल सकते हो कि दोज आर ऑसिफाइड सॉर्ट ऑफ अब्राहमिक स्क्रिप्चर। एक्चुअली रिलीजन कोई भी सेंस में ये है नहीं, क्रिश्चियनिज्म या इस्लाम। दैट्स द पॉइंट, राइट? अगर मतलब
हाँ,
when
वही
you're saying religion,
कंफ्यूजन है
maybe
ना
now
बीजित
right,
का।
हाँ,
वो अभी उसको लेके रिलीजन शब्द बहुत करप्ट हो चुका है। हम
राइट राइट।
हम चाहे माने या ना माने, तो मैं उस
मतलब
सेंस
ये
में
एक्चुअली
बोल रहा हूँ।
सुपरस्टिशन था।
ऐसे
फिर
आपकी बात
क्रिश्चियनिज्म,
सच है,
इस्लाम,
आपकी बात
they
सच है।
adopted the word religion, and by just by adopting the word religion they ruined it.
या और एक बिंदु है, जो अभी नीनर कह रहे थे कि जैसे दीदी पूछ रही थी कि हम लोगों को क्या पश्चिम से कोई विचार नहीं लेना चाहिए। तो मेरा पॉइंट है कि एक सुपर सेट होता है और दूसरा सबसेट होता है। सुपर सेट हमारा होना चाहिए, सबसेट वेस्टर्न कुछ बाहर के आइडियाज का हो सकता है, ठीक है। तो वो ठीक है, पर अब जब सुपर सेट ही वेस्टर्न आइडियाज को बना लेते हैं, यूरोपियन आइडियाज को, सबसेट आपका आइडिया रह जाता है, तो गड़बड़ होता है। जैसे अमेरिका ने भी योगा लिया, मेडिटेशन लिया, बट दैट डज नॉट मीन कि वो खाने पीने हमारे जैसे लग गए, पहनावा उनका हमारे जैसा हो गया, पूरा कल्चर उन्होंने हमारे जैसा बना दिया। नहीं, दैट्स जस्ट अ स्मॉल पार्ट ऑफ देयर लार्जर वेस्टर्न फ्रेमवर्क। उन्होंने योगा को बस अडॉप्ट किया। हम क्या करते हैं, हम अपना सुपर स्ट्रक्चर ही हटा देते हैं। हमने सुपर स्ट्रक्चर ही वेस्ट का ले लिया है। अब हम बोलते हैं कि हम वेस्ट का कुछ ले सकते हैं या नहीं। अरे सुपर स्ट्रक्चर ही तुम्हारा वेस्ट का है। हम
एग्जैक्टली।
बोल रहे सुपर स्ट्रक्चर उसको धर्म का बना। फिर तुम वेस्ट से आइडिया लो, ईस्ट से लो, होनोलुलु से आइडिया लो, कोई दिक्कत नहीं, पर सुपर स्ट्रक्चर तो तुम्हारा अपना होना चाहिए। ये एक पॉइंट था। तीसरा था कि एक जो मुझे बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट लगता है, जो कि आगे जाके हमारा कंटेंशन बनेगा, इंडिविजुअलिज्म। अब देखिए, वेस्ट में क्या हुआ ना, मैं मानता हूँ वेस्ट में ऐसी स्थिति है कि एक जगह सांपनाथ है, दूसरी जगह नागनाथ है। तो सांपनाथ कौन हुआ? सांपनाथ हुआ क्रिश्चियनिटी। नागनाथ हुआ उसका विरोध करने के लिए जो लिबरल आइडियाज आए थे, जैसे बहुत सारे क्लासिकल लिबरल आइडियाज और ये सब। अब मैं क्यों कह रहा हूँ, क्रिश्चियनिटी वॉज अ वेरी कलेक्टिविस्ट रिलीजन, कि सबको एक ही मानना है, सबको एक ही जैसा रहना है, कोई अलग नहीं सोचेगा। मतलब बहुत ही ज्यादा फोर्स किया गया एक कलेक्टिविस्ट आइडिया। और इंडिविजुअलिज्म उतना ही एक्सट्रीम है कि सबको अपनी मनमानी करने का अधिकार मिलना चाहिए, किसी का किसी के प्रति रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं है, सबको एकदम फ्रीडम, जैसा मन चाहे जी सकता है। तो इन्होंने बीच का कोई मार्ग नहीं छोड़ा। अब अभी मैं एक पॉडकास्टर को सुन रहा था कुछ देर पहले, उन्होंने कहा कि इंडिविजुअल इज द अल्टीमेट, इंडिविजुअल फ्लरिशमेंट इज द अल्टीमेट फ्लरिशमेंट, कि जो भी सोशल स्ट्रक्चर्स है जैसे फैमिली, कम्युनिटी वगैरह, इंस्टीट्यूशन, दैट शुड केटर टू द इंडिविजुअल फ्लरिशमेंट। अब धर्म का विचार बहुत अलग है। धर्म का विचार इसका उल्टा है। धर्म बोलता है कि हर इंडिविजुअल के अपने क्वालिटीज होते हैं, ठीक है? मेरे अपने क्वालिटी है, आपके अपने, जैसे आप अपने परिवार में भी सुने होंगे कि परिवार में 5 सदस्य है, वो एक हाथ के बराबर है, पर पाँचों उँगलियाँ बराबर नहीं। ये मैंने अपने माता-पिता से बहुत सुना। तो यहाँ पर इंडिविजुअलिटी की बात हो रही है कि सब अपने-अपने ढंग से परिवार में योगदान देते हैं, पर परिवार में योगदान अवश्य देते हैं। ये नहीं कि परिवार से छूटकर भाग जाते। तो people using their individual qualities to contribute to a larger cause, that is our perspective. वो अल्टीमेट इंडिविजुअल नहीं है, इंडिविजुअल इज द मीन्स टू एन एंड हमारे यहाँ।
एक्चुअली
आप
इसका
देखिए,
एक्चुअली इसका फिलोसॉफिकल फाउंडेशन है। ये तो मतलब ठीक है, व्हेन यू आर मतलब सेइंग कि अच्छा सबका ड्यूटी है, वो तो है, बट देयर इज अ डीपर, मतलब आप अगर मोक्ष के हिसाब से भी देखो, उसका एक डीपर नैरेटिव बनता है। वो ये है कि अगर कोई मतलब इंडिविजुअलिज्म, वी नो कि इंडिया में इंडिविजुअलिज्म इज द वे टू अटेन मोक्ष, राइट? वहाँ पे इंडिविजुअलिज्म वेस्ट के हिसाब से कि दैट इज टू अटेन द ऑल काइंड ऑफ राइट्स, राइट? कि मैं इंडिविजुअल हूँ और मुझे जो इंडिविजुअल राइट्स है वो मिलना चाहिए, तो मैं खुद को एक यूनिट के हिसाब से देखूंगा, एंड द स्टेट विल अलॉट ऑल द राइट। सो देयर इज समवन हु इज सिटिंग अबव मी एंड दैट गाय इज अलॉटिंग राइट टू मी। बट यहाँ पे मोक्ष के हिसाब से अगर देखो तो बोला गया है कि जैसे कि तुम्हारा अगर एक रिपु है, कि एक शत्रु जो है वो एक तुम्हारा काम है, राइट? काम, क्रोध, मद, लोभ, मोह, मात्सर्य। काम एक अगर शत्रु है, काम अगर एक रिपु है, देन तुम्हें मोक्ष कैसे मिलेगा? तो फिर तो तुम्हें फिर यू आर डूइंग कर्मा, और अगर अगर तुम्हारा काम नहीं है, फिर कर्मा कहाँ से करोगे? अगर वो भी तो एक डिजायर से ही आ रहा है। देन द आइडिया इज कि यू नो व्हाट, कि तुम काम रखो, तुम कर्मा भी करो, उसके लिए जो काम रखते हो वो खुद के लिए मत रखो। इट्स लाइक तुम्हारा जो काम है उसको चैनलाइज करो टू थिंक गुड ऑफ द सोसाइटी, टू डू गुड ऑफ द सोसाइटी। ये अगर तुम कामना रखते हो, देन उसको, ये जो काम है इसको तुम एक्सटर्नलाइज कर रहे हो, देन इट इज नॉट अ रिपू एनीमोर। तो तुम्हारा कर्म भी हो रहा है, तुम्हारा ये डिजायर भी है जिसको तुम एक्सटर्नलाइज कर चुके हो, और उस हिसाब से तुम निष्काम कर्म कर रहे हो फॉर द वर्ल्ड एंड फॉर द सोसाइटी एंड फॉर योर सेल्फ। उस हिसाब से फिर तुम्हें मोक्ष मिलेगा। सो दिस इज द, सो यहाँ पे जब इस हिसाब से तुम काम को रख रहे हो, इस हिसाब से जब इंडिविजुअलिज्म को रख रहे हो, तो इंडिविजुअलिज्म भी रिटेन हो रहा है, एंड इट्स इन अ वेरी नेचुरल वे व्हेन यू डोंट हैव डिजायर, लाइक यू नो कि नेचुरल जो बीइंग इन अपीयरेंस बोलते हैं जिसे, वहां पे चीजों को an object or a degree of freedom at a given scale, they don't have any desire। इसलिए जब उनको एग्रीगेट करते हो तो नेचुरली वो क्लस्टरिंग होता है, राइट? और अलग अलग नेचुरल लॉ निकलता है। यहाँ पे तुम जब निष्काम कर्म करते हो, यू आर बीइंग पार्ट ऑफ दैट नेचुरल ऑर्डर, और उस हिसाब से फिर तुम्हारा इंडिविजुअलिज्म भी रिटेन हो रहा है, तुम्हें मोक्ष भी मिल रहा है, और फिर वहां से जो क्रिएट हो रहा है वो भूमा क्रिएट हो रहा है। बिगर कॉन्सेप्ट क्रिएट हो रहा है, विच इज फॉर्मेशन ऑफ सोसाइटी। तो ये बहुत अच्छे तरीके से
अ,
मतलब हिंदुइज्म में डील किया
ac-
गया है, जो वहां पे डील नहीं किया गया। वहां पे इंडिविजुअलिज्म मतलब ये सेग्रीगेटेड चीजें हैं, और उनके राइट्स भी सेग्रीगेटेड है, और वो अगर, और ड्यूटी तो नाम मात्र का कुछ नहीं है। वहां पे सिविक ड्यूटी डिफाइन नहीं किया गया है उनके, ना उनके कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में ना हमारे। इसलिए हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन तो पहले वहां से चापा गया है, तो इसलिए हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में ड्यूटी नहीं है। अगर तुम ड्यूटी का सेंस नहीं रखोगे, फिर तुम सोसाइटी कैसे क्रिएट करोगे?
जैसे मोक्ष की भी बात करें ना विजिता, तो मोक्ष भी यूनिटी कॉन्शियसनेस की बात करे। जैसे
राइट।
वो बोलता है कि आप सब में ईश्वर देखो, आप भी वही ईश्वर तत्व है जो सब में है, तो सबसे जुड़ने के लिए ही कह रहा है, वो सबसे
राइट।
टूटने के लिए नहीं कह रहा है। तो
एग्जैक्टली।
आप यदि आध्यात्मिक स्तर पे भी देखेंगे ना, तो सबको एक साथ जोड़ने की ही बात हो रही है हमारे दर्शन में। तो
राइट।
हमारे और इसीलिए आप इंडिविजुअलिज्म की जब बात होती है ना, तो मैं इंडिविजुअलिज्म शब्द का प्रयोग करना ही उचित नहीं समझता, मैं उसको इंडिविजुअलिटी बोलता हूँ। क्योंकि इंडिविजुअलिटी होता है कि किसी व्यक्ति के अपने गुण, उसका अपना स्वभाव होगा, अपना गुण होगा, वो अपना कुछ अलग ढंग से करेगा, वो अलग अलग क्षेत्र में काम करेंगे लोग। आप अपने क्षेत्र में करेंगे, मैं अपने क्षेत्र में करूंगा। इंडिविजुअलिज्म क्या होता है ना, ये एक मूवमेंट है। इंडिविजुअलिज्म जहां आ जाता है ना, वो एक मूवमेंट है टुवर्ड्स अचीविंग समथिंग। कि नहीं, मुझे सब इंडिविजुअलिस्टिक होना है, कोई मुझे कुछ ना बोले, कोई कोई रोक टोक ना हो, मुझे अपने मन मर्जी से सब कुछ करना। वहां पर फिर गड़बड़ होने लगती, जब आप लार्जर कॉज नहीं समझते। तो मैं इसीलिए कह रहा था इंडिविजुअलिज्म और इंडिविजुअलिटी, क्योंकि वेस्ट में इसका कोई प्रॉपर फ्रेमवर्क मुझे तो नहीं दिखता है। एक और है आपका इब्राहिमिक रिलीजन्स, जो एकदम इंडिविजुअल को खत्म ही कर देता है, इंडिविजुअलिटी को खत्म कर देता है। दूसरा है इंडिविजुअलिज्म, जो लार्जर पर्पस को खत्म कर देता है। आप लार्जर स्ट्रक्चर ही मेंटेन नहीं करोगे, जैसे आज हम वेस्टर्न यूरोप या अमेरिका में देखते हैं, तो वो इंडिविजुअल भी ज्यादा समय तक टिक नहीं पाएगा, क्योंकि उस इंडिविजुअल को भी दूसरे का सहारा चाहिए। अकेले कोई नहीं समाज को मतलब जी सकता है एक सीमा पर्यंत। वो सस्टेनेबल मॉडल ही नहीं। इसीलिए मैंने इंडिविजुअलिटी कहा था कि वेयर यू हैव अ सेंस ऑफ रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी टुवर्ड्स अ लार्जर गोल और अ लार्जर स्ट्रक्चर। तो ये मेरा विचार था इसमें।
Yeah, we also have Rishi and Neener. So, would you like to share your opinion
हेलो ऋषि।
on individualism specifically, because it's a very important and misunderstood concept, and also how moksha works as an individual, because moksha cannot be correct communal; it's an individual thing.
नमस्ते दादा, नमस्ते विजित दा, संस्थापक को भी और
नमस्ते।
नेनर भाई आपको भी नमस्ते। So I have sent a link. You can maybe share that.
Yeah,
संस्थापक ने जो कहा था on individualism, actually on the contrary, we have evidence that individualism is something that came out of Christianity, Christianism, to quote Bijidda. And uh, all of you could please
and
comment on this,
and one
because
more thing.
when
Yeah,
this link will
one
open.
more thing. One more thing. I open कर रहा हूँ. See, one more thing is there. Correct. In the in the ancient societies, even in the tribal societies that we see, correct, there is a concept of collective ownership of the land, food, and resources, correct. So if you see, correct, if you see the tribal chiefs in the northeast of India, correct, in Arunachal or Nagaland or that region, so the chief actually, as the guardian of that tribe, actually owns all the land. Correct. So, like, no individual is owning that specific land, but the whole community owns the land. So this individualism, where I have something which I need to need to have, so that also is there. Correct. It is a something which is a very new phenomena in a way that, okay, I have to specify what I need to own, and nobody can touch that thing. Go ahead, Rishi.
Yes, absolutely. So, Actually, someone who studies anthropology, they will know that for any individual to even survive, there needs to be someone to support him at all levels, from his birth to his younger age and so on. So this whole setup of society there comes in, and as you have explained to us right now about collective ownership of land, and then maybe family, uh, larger society, community, later on institutions such as sabhas, what would you say, community halls, town halls, these all governments, these are just evolutions out of that necessity. uh, yeah, this is the article which I was talking about, although this is an
Hmm, go
article
ahead.
by some Christian guy. He
Hmm.
tries to say that no, Christianity also talks about collectivism. So he's trying to argue against the individualism which has come out of Christianity. But over here we see that what Christianity gave actually at that time in its age was deconstruction of family. So there is a verse, I think, maybe Vijitda can quote that in Bible. It's there where even Nina can quote it, I guess. So where Jesus says that to I have come with a sword to
Right. To
uh,
destroy,
to
to destroy
yeah,
your family or whatever. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, right. To sow seeds of discomfort, to make son fight the father, the
Exactly.
daughter fight the mother, yeah, so on and so forth. So uh, from this onwards, and then there is this whole concept of individual salvation, right? So between God and the individual there is no mediator, unlike in maybe in
Yes.
Judaism. I do not know much in that. There is some prophet or the rabbi. So here is nobody. He can get direct salvation. So these all things supposedly gave rise to individualism. Just wanted all of you to comment on this position, I guess. Maybe I'll speak later on. I would like to know all of your views.
Yeah, go ahead. Whoever wants to.
Uh, but I have a question on this. But doesn't Abrahamic ideologies lead to groupthink? Like Christianity also, there is that thing called groupthink with
No,
Christianity.
no.
Like
It creates a lamb. So the group is basically the group of the pack of lambs. So it's basically these are basically ideologies of totalitarian control. So when they are talking about groups, it is basically the group of these sheeps, right? Who will listen to some order which is coming from someone above. That is the matlab, this is how it is said that Constantine the Great adopted Christianity, right? Christianism, so that he can control these servile people, the servile sort of pack of lambs. तो वहां पे तो ग्रुप चलता है, बट इंडिविजुअलिज्म यहाँ पे चलता
but
है कि इन ऑर्डर टू द स्टेट इटसेल्फ, मतलब जो पावर है, जो कंट्रोल एज्यूम कर रहा है, जो बेसिकली यहाँ पे गॉड है. सी, यहाँ पे बेसिकली क्या होता है, देयर इज अ गॉड हु इज यूजिंग जीसस इन ऑर्डर टू कंट्रोल द पीपल. ना उस गॉड को तुम या तो रिप्लेस करो कार्ल मार्क्स से, या फिर उस गॉड को तुम रिप्लेस करो कोई डोनाल्ड ट्रंप से, right? So basically now Donald Trump need to talk to every individual individually. So Donald Trump then need to sort of destroy the family structure, so that इनके आपस में ये जो लैम्ब है इनका एक ही ग्रुप बना रहे और उनमें सारे लोग इंडिविजुअल यूनिट हो, सो दैट वहां पे बिग ब्रदर जो है या फिर जो गॉड है उनसे जो मैसेज आ रहा है वो डायरेक्टली एक इंडिविजुअल को एड्रेस कर सके, ना कि कोई एक पैक को एक एक ग्रुप, मतलब ग्रुप विद इन ग्रुप को एड्रेस कर सके. दैट वे चीजों को
तो
कंट्रोल करना आसान नहीं होता है.
तो ये इंडिविजुअलिज्म है ना, एटमाइजेशन ऑफ द सोसाइटी है, क्योंकि इंडिविजुअलिज्म जितना मुझे पता था वो ये था कि स्वतंत्र विचार होना, कि अ, आप अपने से फ्री हो कुछ सोचने के लिए या कुछ करने के लिए। तो यहाँ पर तो मुझे वो फ्रीडम नहीं दिखता है। तो क्या ये एटमाइज़ेशन है, दैट एवरी सिंगल इंडिविजुअल इज़ लाइक एन एटम where
एग्जैक्टली
they don't have relationship with any other individual, like a
राइट,
family or whatever?
एटमाइजेशन कह सकते हो, बट आई नीड टू टेल यू हियर दैट द वेरी वर्ड एटम हैज कम फ्रॉम द वर्ड आत्मन एक्चुअली। ठीक है, तो अगर आत्मन के सेंस में नहीं ले रहे हो तो ठीक है, बट इट इज
नहीं, नहीं,
एक्चुअली
नहीं।
मतलब हाँ, इन द वेस्टर्न कॉन्टेक्स्ट आई नो व्हाट यू आर सेइंग, इट इज द एटमाइजेशन ऑफ सोसाइटी, कि सबको बिल्कुल तोड़ दो बिल्कुल ही, ताकि कोई फैमिली स्ट्रक्चर भी ना रहे, गांव वाला भी ना कोई स्ट्रक्चर रहे, ताकि डायरेक्टली इंडिविजुअल तक पहुंच सके।
बट आई थिंक
So I
उसके
have
बाद
some
एक
thoughts
बार
on
जब
this.
क्रिश्चियनिटी मैं एक बात बोल दूं फिर आप कह लीजिएगा नीनर। एक बार
हाँ,
क्रिश्चियनिटी लागू हो जाती है ना, जैसे एक बार क्रिश्चियनिटी लागू हो गई, फिर इनके फैमिलीज तो बन ही गए थे, आई गेस फैमिलीज, कम्युनिटीज, चर्च कम्युनिटीज, फैमिलीज, पति पत्नी के रोल्स क्या है, बच्चे के क्या रोल्स है। तो इन्होंने पहले ट्रेडिशनल सोसाइटी जो क्रिश्चियन नहीं थी उसको पूरा तोड़ा, एटमाइज़ किया। फिर क्रिश्चियनिटी इन पर थोपी क्योंकि ये लोग अब एकदम इंडिविजुअल एटम्स जैसे बन गए, क्योंकि जब आप एटमाइज़ हो जाते हो एज़ अ सोसाइटी, यू लूज़ द एबिलिटी टू रिटेलिएट अगेंस्ट ऑनस्लॉट। फिर जब इन्होंने एक बार कैप्चर कर लिया तो फिर उन्होंने नॉर्मल सोशल स्ट्रक्चर लागू कर दिया, लाइक फैमिली एंड community and all, and it was on the basis of superstitio, that is Christianity. Let me know if I'm wrong.
नहीं, वही वहीं पे तो हम लोग क्वेश्चन कर रहे हैं ना, कि मतलब एट व्हाट कॉस्ट, कि इन्होंने सब डिस्ट्रॉय कर दिया, फिर एनोमली जो क्रिएट हुए वहां से, वो एनोमली को वाइट वॉश करने के लिए दे मेड चर्च, बट स्टिल ये सब करने के बाद भी डिड कुड दे अचीव दिस नेचुरलनेस, द ऑर्गेनिकनेस ऑफ नेचुरल कन्वेंशन? वहीं पे हम लोग एक्चुअली हिट करना चाहते हैं कि नहीं, इट इज नॉट पॉसिबल। तो फिर ये जो एनोमलीज क्रिएट हुआ, मतलब इन डिफरेंट नॉलेज सिस्टम, उसको फिर डील करने के लिए या तो वाइट वॉश करने लगे, या फिर वाइट वॉश से पहले जो यूनिफाइड एक नॉलेज सिस्टम था उसको इन्होंने तोड़ा, कि साइंस अलग है, फिलोसफी अलग है, हिस्ट्री अलग है, हिस्ट्री फिलोसफी से अलग है, फिर जो मतलब दे स्टार्टेड टू माइक्रो मैनेज ईच ऑफ द सब्जेक्ट्स। और क्योंकि ताकि ये जो अलग अलग सब्जेक्ट है ये आपस में बात करना बंद कर दे। ठीक है, सो आई आई सी स्पेशलाइजेशन फ्रॉम द पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ दिस अब्राहमिक हिस्ट्री ऑफ सेंट्रिसिटी, कि इन्होंने सब कुछ तबाह कर दिया, उसके बाद भी ये लोग जो एनोमलीज क्रिएट हुआ उसको मिटा नहीं पाए। तो अब वो एनोमली को एड्रेस करने के लिए ये सारे सब्जेक्ट को तोड़ दिया। इनिशियली मतलब द होल नॉलेज सिस्टम वाज यूनिफाइड, जहां से स्पिरिचुअलिटी निकल रहा है, एस्ट्रोनॉमी निकल रहा है, ठीक है, जहां से हिस्ट्री निकल रहा है, क्योंकि पुराण में भी काफी सारे आर्कियो एस्ट्रोनॉमिकल डेटिंग दिया हुआ है। लेकिन इन्होंने वो सारा तोड़ दिया, ताकि हम लोग ह्यूमन नॉलेज के अंदर से ये चीज़ों को एड्रेस ना कर पाए, इसको जान ना पाए। ठीक है, और अगर हिस्ट्री के अंदर फिलोसफी रह गया तो बोला कि यार इसके अंदर तो फिलोसफी है, ये पुराण को तो फिर हिस्ट्री नहीं बोल सकते, एट मोस्ट इसको माइथोलॉजी कह सकते हैं। सो इस तरह से इन्होंने पूरा चीज़ों को हॉगवॉश किया। उसके बाद भी मतलब इंडिया का जो सिविलाइजेशन कंटिन्यूम है उसको ये लोग तोड़ नहीं पा रहे हैं, तो इसलिए अब योगेंद्र यादव आ रहा है कि नहीं, हमें तो जो भी लोकल लैंग्वेज में भी जो कंटिन्यूम दिखता है वो भी तोड़ना होगा हमें। और इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थियरी पे जो लेक्चर दे रहे हैं उसका, उसके पीछे इनका इनका इंटेंशन यही है कि इस कॉन्टिन्यूम को तोड़ना।
और मुझे लगता है इसका सबसे बड़ा अटेम्प्ट है इनका कि संस्कृत को अटैक करना एज अ लैंग्वेज, क्योंकि संस्कृत प्रोवाइडेड दैट लार्जर अम्ब्रेला ऑल अक्रॉस इंडियन लैंग्वेजेस, जो हमें वो इंटीग्रेट करता था। जैसे जो हमारे शब्द है धर्म, कर्म, मोक्ष, ये आपको किसी भी भारतीय भाषा में मिल जाएंगे। ऐसा नहीं है कि ये केवल हिंदी में बोले जाते हैं या तेलुगु में बोले जाते हैं या बंगाली में बोले जाते हैं, ये हर भारतीय भाषा में उपयुक्त है। तो जब आपका संस्कृत का बेस डिस्ट्रॉय किया जाता है, तो सोसाइटी फिर बिखर जाती है। मुझे लगता है वो उन्होंने किया जानबूझ के कि संस्कृत को सबसे पहले अटैक करो, जो इंटेग्रिटी लाते हैं नॉलेज, भारत के नॉलेज सिस्टम। और
यस, सो
व
नीनर
हुँ,
या एक्चुअली या इस पॉइंट पे एक्चुअली नीनर का एक अच्छा पॉइंट है जो मैंने अभी यहाँ पर डाला है। तो नीनर, गो ahead and can just elaborate the point that you have given in the chat.
At first, I want to speak on what we were talking about earlier on individualism. Hmm. So, like Rishi quoted the verse, right, which even Bijeet attested to, that there is a verse where they point out where the church, or you can say the Christian religion, actually wants to go against the family, and this is the same for all the Abrahamic religions, you can say. But uh, what I would really what I would really think is the first time when individualism takes precedent is during Protestant Reformation. This happened. Everybody knows when Martin Luther and all that happened, when they the thesis and all, and that everyone is supposed to decide what the scripture is for themselves. The attack here, it was basically on all authorities, that they don't believe in a higher king, they don't believe in a higher church, they don't believe in any higher priest. It was it was an attack, all out attack on structure in general. Everyone is supposed to decide religion for themselves. So originally they used this for their own spirituality, to decide what kind of spirituality they want in Protestantism. But this backfired, because then everyone was basically becoming a free thinker, and they realize they don't even want Christianity in the first place. And that is when we move on to the, you can say, the Enlightenment era, when there are all sorts of political philosophies about freedom, about rights, about, you can say, capitalism, communism, everything coming up. So that is one thing. So the thing is, it's not about going against family or going against, uh, you can say, a language or anything. It is an attack on authority in general, that nobody can be above me. The individual is the only sacred thing. The individual is above everyone else. And this is different from the previous structure. Even in Christian societies, uh, in Catholic feudal society, it was such that the priests were at the top, or at least the priests were taken as the highest authority, and they were exempt from taxes, but they had to perform penances and all that. And even the feudal lords and all, they had certain authority which was higher than the peasants. When the Protestant Reformation happened, every at every level, basically, the authority was challenged, and this became the basically the path towards the modern day individualism, because now there is no acceptance about any authority. Even the state is challenged. uh, there are people who want to become anarchists, in who believe in anarchy basically, and that they believe that it is a natural state of things and all that. And yeah, so that is the point I wanted to make. So basically, yeah, authority is important because there needs to be an institution above you. A family can be the institution, or you can say in our Hinduism, a guru was the institution, a gurukul, where the guru would be the authority giving you the instruction. Or there could be shastras, like all our Puranas, or our you can say Dharma Shastras and so on. They're also basically Shabda Praman and all that, right? So yeah, those are the authorities. And but individualism, it is a challenge to this authority in general.
Okay, understood. So, would you like to now talk about this specific point that you had raised regarding materialism is the path of least resistance and individualism is the facilitator?
Right. So the this is about from we were talking earlier about individualism, right? So this thought comes from the framework that, from the question, that is in materialism the end point of individualism. Some might argue that one kind of individualism might lead to more spirituality instead of materialism. So, yeah, there are many answers to that question, but the main answer here is if you seek materialism and you secularize, that is, you give up a religious framework or a dharmic framework overall, that is when it becomes. Sorry, I meant if you become individualist and you give up a religious framework and authority framework, that is when materialism becomes the natural outcome. And
How
because
to
you have no
explain it?
authority to guide you,
Explain this. Explain this.
Which one?
right?
You take you
Well,
take individualism and then you take out God out of it. I think that's what he said. Then it is materialism, right?
yeah. So this is what happened with Protestants in Europe. They started becoming individual, and the moment they started even questioning God or religion itself, that is when suddenly everything becomes about materialism. That is what the ideologies like capitalism, communism, they are all about material wealth. Communism is about distributing
Okay.
the wealth,
So
and
in a way, it's
capitalism
like
is about.
individualism without the metaphysical existence or without the acknowledgement of any metaphysical existence makes you
Or an authority
exclusively
framework in general.
physical, makes you exclusively physical, which is materialism.
Yeah, and you can say an authority framework. For example, earlier there would be church in their society, at least to some extent, that prevented that kind of materialism. And
But
in
here the
our
authority
society,
is basically the material itself, the object itself, like
yeah,
like the world itself. Yeah, like
no, the authority is individual, or the individual decides everything. Nobody decides for him. His parents don't decide for him.
but then
His society,
that becomes individualism, right?
yeah, that I'm talking about that only.
And then how to elevate it from individualism to materialism, right? That's the question.
Oh, wait. I'm talking about individualism once it's transformed into materialism. So, okay, I'll start again from beginning. And then I think I got confused in between. So the this sentence, materialism is the path of least resistance, and individualism is its facilitator. So why is this? Why am I mentioning this? Because uh, I thought that um that materialism might be the end point of individualism in general. And what happened historically was when Protestants started deciding scriptures for themselves without looking up to the church, they started eventually people started questioning religion itself, and they started forming other ideologies based on the individual. So everything becomes individual based.
That is
Basically,
individualism.
uh,
That is
Neenar,
individualism.
I
so
have a
once they
point
give
to
up,
add.
yeah,
Uh, can we think about this from the perspective of Maslow's
hmm.
hierarchy? Why does it lead to materialism when you give up on God?
Oh, yeah. Very good point. Very good point. So at the top of Maslow's hierarchy, uh, Upendra, you can put the diagram, Maslow's hierarchy diagram. No? At the top of it, I think it's spirituality, which comes on the top. So when people were actually giving up religion and becoming atheists in modern society, everyone is becoming atheist. So they have actually given up on the highest, you can say, uh, the highest self-actualizing potential of themselves, and they come down a level to just be materialists. That is actually a downgrade. Very good point by Dharma Sansthapak.
Because the idea of God in Christianity was not compatible with logic. But in my view, that is not necessarily the case with Dharma. So when many people in India say that once the country grows richer, they tend to become irreligious. If people understand Dharma properly, it will be the other way around. as the country grows richer, India will become more spiritual and religious in that sense, more dharmic. It should, if we have a proper understanding of dharma and what the idea of Ishvara is in our culture.
I am uploading it. Hold on.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I think in general, this question it boils down to the thing about authority, whether we accept a higher authority than ourselves in our life. Even on the individual level, you should know what authority is above you, what is below you, and accept your place in society in a sense. Not in a degrading manner. That was never degrading to our ancestors in a way. That to be a chela is not be degrading. To be a student is not degrading. So there is actually a hierarchy, and that hierarchy must not be completely thrown out.
Bijit
So
bra, are
even in the
we
case of yes,
yeah, Ninar, I have that
uh-huh.
diagram. You can see, correct? So you can
Ha
go ahead
ha.
and
Dharma Sansthapak, you can speak on this.
No, I have a question only. Even
Hmm.
in the case of self-actualization, here we can see self-actualization. That means basically moksha. To be honest, self-actualization is what? Uh,
Yeah, for us it will be
आत्मा
moksha only.
आत्म चेतना का उत्थान करना is self actualization in our culture at least. So who is the authority in that case? So you are saying Ishvara is the authority.
No, tradition is the authority. Everything, for example, you have a teacher. Your teacher is the authority in your life. Or you can say the traditional teacher. They would be the authority in their life. The scripture, that would be another authority. Family traditions can be another authority. What your the ways of life that you have that your family has always lived, you continue them. Those are the authority on how to continue living your life. So those are the kinds of example I'm thinking of. And there are obviously other authorities, um, where you can also use your own logic, obviously, to adapt and basically fit itself in to make it continuous with the tradition. So yeah, that's how you make choices in general.
Okay. Yeah, I understand the importance of authority because sometimes authorities can give you direction in life. Otherwise, you may feel very lost where to go, what to do. Uh, Still, I think here maybe I am confusing between there is something called spiritual authority and something called social authority. So we are told to transcend all our social attachments to achieve the ultimate spiritual goal, that is moksha. And in my view, that moksha or Ishvara is the ultimate authority. If we look at it from your perspective of people needing authority and how Protestantism is an attempt to target authority,
Of
and that
course,
is what leads
because
to individual.
of course, because tradition itself is given to us by the gods. In what I can make out of it, at least, maybe Rishi can elaborate on this, on how we get our scriptures. We get them from our own gods, right? For example,
Yes,
Manu
yes.
gives us Manusmriti and so on.
Yeah, yeah. Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, the whole explanation of tradition comes there, right? Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavan Ham Avyayam. From the Vivaswan Manu came down the Vidya, line by line, line by line. It goes down the tradition. So that's how they explain it. Yeah.
So yeah, that was the point.
okay. So I think
By the way,
let's
someone,
take. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, someone put a counterpoint to Ninar. I think, Dada, you can maybe.
Yeah. Actually, I
comments.
shared
You
that.
showed them.
Yeah.
I'm
Mm.
actually unable to see it in the chat for some
No,
reason.
it is here na. I have highlighted it in the
Ah,
screen
okay,
itself.
okay.
Screen.
I'm categorically taking definition of Marxist definition of materialism. See, and the end thing is it's the same thing that materialism in the end is the search for it is the search for artha or basically objects which will satisfy your desire. So I'm not really going to Marxist definition or anything. But for me, it is simple. Artha is basically anything satisfying your kama or your desire. For example, collection of money itself might be a goal, or say having a car, maybe the desire to drive it fast or something. It satisfies that. So yeah, Artha is basically the materialism is basically going after the objects that satisfy your desires. That is my definition, I think. Others can comment on this.
I have one more question to answer by history
Hmm.
mythology. That is, as per as moksha nirvana kaivalya is concerned, Hinduism is the most individualistic. So, in process, it is that is, everyone will have a very individualistic process to reach that goal, but the goal itself is not individualistic. The goal is all pervasive, it includes everyone because we are the manifestation of that same ultimate reality. If we go by Advait Vedanta or most of the philosophies in Hinduism.
Yes, yes, Abhay, you have hit the nail on the head. So when somebody actually, because it's a very fine-grained, nuanced concept that we are talking about. So when we are talking about nirvana, vaikalya, or moksha, correct? So what is the goal? The goal is to merge with the Brahman, merge with the ultimate reality. So by achieving nirvana or moksha, you are again going to become part of the community or part of the bigger existence. Correct? Again, that's a group thing itself.
यहाँ पे आई वुड लाइक टू ऐड समथिंग एक्चुअली.
Hmm,
यहाँ
hmm.
पे जब हिंदुइज्म को इंडिविजुअलिज्म या इंडिविजुअलिटी के साथ जोड़ रहे हो, अगेन इंडिविजुअलिटी और इंडिविजुअलिज्म दोज आर डुअल आइडियाज. हिंदुइज्म जो मोक्षा या फिर निर्वाणा का बात कर रहा है उसमें ईगो नहीं है. इंडिविजुअलिज्म में यू नीड टू हैव एन ईगो, राइट? तो आप जैसे जो यूनिफिकेशन का बात भूपेंद्र कर रहा है, वहाँ पे दैट इज पॉसिबल ओनली व्हेन यू डोंट हैव एन ईगो, और इट इज द ईगो दैट इज द वॉचमैन ऑफ इंडिविजुअलिज्म इन एन इंडिविजुअल, राइट? तो वही फर्क है आई थिंक. यहाँ पे और एक क्वेश्चन आया था विच इज दैट Hindus don't get scriptures from gods, etc. Vedas are अपौरुषीय. Now, यहाँ पे ये जो अपौरुषीय, अप्रमेय, ये जो वर्ड की यूज किया जाता है, अप्रमेय जैसे भगवान को बोला जाता है, कृष्ण का अलग नाम अप्रमेय है, क्योंकि जो प्रमाण शास्त्र है, ईश्वर प्रमाण से ऊपर है, इसलिए ईश्वर को अप्रमेय कहा जाता है. वेदास को सिमिलरली अपौरुषीय इसलिए कहा जाता है कि कोई पुरुष ने क्रिएट नहीं किया. नाउ व्हाट इज पुरुष? पुरुष इज बेसिकली दैट ओरिजिनल कॉज इन अ वे, ठीक है, जिससे सारा प्रकृति निकला है. तो ओरिजिनल कॉज जिससे पूरा प्रकृति निकला है वो पुरुष है. सो बिकॉज वेदास आर बियॉन्ड दैट ओरिजिनल कॉज, इसलिए वेदा को शायद अपौरुषीय कहा जाता है, कि उससे भी बियॉन्ड वेदा आता है, क्योंकि ऑब्वियसली वो बिल्कुल ही मेटाफिजिकल, इसका एक इटर्नल एग्जिस्टेंस है. अगर वेदास का एग्जिस्टेंस इटर्नल है, इट कैन नॉट बी पार्ट ऑफ पुरुष इवन, राइट? तो इसलिए आई थिंक वेदा को अपौरुषीय कहा जाता है, राइट?
बीजी तो अभी आप कह रहे थे इंडिविजुअलिज्म के बारे में कि उसमें एक ईगो रहता है एंड इफ यू वांट टू अटेन मोक्षा यू हैव टू गिव अप ऑन दैट ईगो टू बी अ पार्ट ऑफ दैट होल और
राइट.
एक्सपीरियंस yourself being a part of that whole. uh, जैसे मैंने इंडिविजुअलिटी पे कहा था, डू यू थिंक कि आप अपना विचार दीजिए इस पर कि there is a point to what I said, that is every human being has their own qualities, so that those
Boysalidi is
individual.
asking to join. So can you please? हाँ एक मिनट, बोईशाली भी ज्वाइन करना चाहती है, तो आप थोड़ा भेज दो ना भूपेंद्र. हाँ प्लीज गो ऑन प्लीज, सॉरी.
So
Yeah,
regarding
Boshalidi,
individuality,
the link is there. Just hold on. The link is there. Boshalidi, go to the channel and community post. You will find. I have posted the link in the community post. You can just click on the link and join. Or let me, if you can find, just let me know, or I will share it to you right now. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
okay. So individuality, I was talking about that every human being is different and will have a different path to moksha. So does individuality make sense? That I'm not saying there should be an ego that I am different from others or I should not attain moksha, but the the point is not about the bhav of the person, but more about uh, what are the tendencies and proclivities of a human being, because everyone is different in their tendency.
राइट.
So, so do you think there is a point when I say that individuality is something which should be respected or which should be taken into account when we talk about these issues?
नहीं, अलग अलग बात इसलिए बोला जाता है ना, क्योंकि अलग अलग लोगों का अलग अलग. सो बेसिकली एवरीवन हैव दिस इंद्रिय, राइट, जिसके थ्रू चीज़ों को परसीव किया जाता है. मतलब जो प्रकृति है उसको परसीव किया जाता है, तो उसके हिसाब से इंसान के अंदर गुण पैदा होता है. ठीक है. सो वो जो गुण होता है उसके हिसाब से फिर वो मतलब जब वो ईगो बनाता है, फिर उसको गुण विकार भी कहते हैं ना. अलग अलग बात, मतलब क्योंकि अलग अलग लोगों का एक्सपीरियंस अलग है, तो ऑब्वियसली परसेप्शन अलग होगा. उसका ईगो जिस हिसाब से दुनिया को परसीव करता है वो अलग होगा. आई थिंक उस हिसाब से फिर पाथ भी अलग होगा, राइट. बट जहाँ रीच करना है वो उसका तो जितने सारे योग बताया गया है, दोज योग आर आई थिंक सॉर्ट ऑफ वेल डिफाइंड. वो प्रैक्टिस करते रहो, फिर ऑब्वियसली द पाथ इज डिफरेंट बिकॉज द एक्सपीरियंस में भी डिफरेंट, बट यू विल रीच अ सिंगल कॉमन गोल. आई थिंक उस हिसाब से चीज़ों को डिफाइन किया गया है, एटलीस्ट इन सांख्य, या फिर
इसीलिए तो
मनुस्मृति में
इतने
भी
सारे
ऋषि भी
दर्शन है,
Okay,
इतने सारे
Okay.
दर्शन, इतने सारे
Okay.
दार्शनिक.
Hello. Hello. Okay. I
yeah,
think Boshalidi has joined. Boshalidi, you want
yeah.
to like speak
Just
about
a
that apology
just
part?
yeah, just a little bit, just a small
Yeah.
bite.
Yeah.
Is that there is a very good explanation by Rishi Aurobindo in his writings. What is the idea behind the idea? Just like what Vijit says, that knowledge cannot be created. Knowledge basically exists in nature, right? And if you read the Bhagavad Gita also very carefully, you will see that Krishna is telling Arjun that this is not a knowledge that I'm creating for you right now. This
एग्जैक्टली.
knowledge has been given to this person, to this person, by this person to this person to this person, and so on and so forth. Ikshvaku by blah 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 blah, and so on and so on. This knowledge has been given by the son to some to the Ikshvaku, like the ancient Ikshvaku dynasty king. And if you go back even further, this knowledge exists at the root of nature itself. So this knowledge exists in nature. So think about it. Look, we are eating every day. We eat food every day. What is the root of that? That is photosynthesis, right? I mean, today, even if you're eating a mutton biryani, that exists because photosynthesis exists. Grass grows or some green something, leafy something, and a goat is eating that, and so on and so forth. You are you are here because plants are doing photosynthesis. uh, do you know exactly how photosynthesis works? You ask anybody, they will tell you, oh, it's very easy. It's CO2 plus H2O, 6 CO2 plus 6 H2O, giving rise to, C6H12O6 plus 6O2. That's just the overarching, molecular equation that you're giving us. It proceeds through a myriad of steps that are catalyzed
राइट.
by very complicated enzymes. Even today, these enzymatic complexes, these catalysts are a subject of research. You don't exactly know the structure of the, you don't know this, you will never know the structure because you cannot define what an electron is, but you can't exactly speculate the structure of the magnesium complex catalyst that facilitates the rate determining step of photosynthesis. So that means that, but nature is doing photosynthesis, वो तो कर रहा है, वो तो तुमसे परमिशन लेकर नहीं कर रहा है, वो तुमसे मैकेनिज्म नहीं मांग रहा है. So the knowledge, who has the secrets of all these knowledges? It is nature, right? So now this knowledge exists in nature. Modulo the existence of this knowledge in nature, you and I are not exactly creating any knowledge. We are increasing our perceptive capability so that at some plane we can perceive some of that knowledge and pass it down to other people. That is why Vedas, which are metaphysical, which are trying to see the reality of life, are considered a Paurushaya, because this knowledge exists in nature. But tum, as a human being or as an animal or whatever, you are you are a tool of this knowledge. You are a tool of nature. You are basically trying to increase your intuitive potential to the extent that you can perceive at least some part of that secret as to how and why this is happening in nature. So that is why the word apaurushaya comes about for
Right.
Vedas and not for Smriti.
So I think that knowledge exists. It's upon us how we deduce it. I mean, knowledge. I mean, gaining, perceiving it through deduction.
Deduce matlab, see it's like
नहीं, आई मीन जैसे मैं कह रहा हूँ कि जैसे ग्रेविटी थी, अ, तो ग्रेविटी थी वो एवर एग्जिस्टेंट बात है, जब से पृथ्वी है तब से ग्रेविटी है. बट हाउ डू वी राइट अ मैथमेटिकल इक्वेशन फॉर इट दैट इज अपॉन आर इंटेलिजेंस और आर वे ऑफ अंडरस्टैंडिंग दैट रियलिटी, कि हम अपना बुद्धि कितना लगाते हैं.
yeah, even within gravity, right? You can see ki, for example, when we are talking about gravity, so we can say ki, okay, what is gravity and how gravity works, right? So the best possible model is general theory of relativity, for example. But then we don't know why gravity, for example. I can ask this question, "No, why gravity?" What will be the answer? Science cannot answer this. Now, so isn't it part of the knowledge about gravity? Yes, it is. But we are actually, matlab, that's the point, na, ki if I'm a scientist and I'm being arrogant in thinking ki I know everything about gravity or science or physics knows everything about gravity, it is not actually true. Maybe there are bunch of other information about gravity and वही जैसे एक हाथी है, हाथी का किसी ने पूछ देखा तो साइंस ने पूछ देख हाथी ने मतलब साइंस ने शायद उसका सर देख लिया पूरा, लेकिन सर से आगे क्या है वो शायद देखा नहीं, साइंस को पता भी नहीं है. बिकॉज साइंस क्या करता है, साइंस इज एक्चुअली एटलीस्ट द फिजिक्स एज वी नो इट, it's a it it what it do it does, it's like okay, it solves a certain set of equations of motion. तो अभी कहाँ पे है और 2 मिनट बाद कहाँ पे रहेगा, इट विल बेसिकली प्रेडिक्ट, राइट? ये यही काम है फिजिक्स का काम. ये एक हिसाब से ये ज्योतिष है, राइट? ज्योतिष शास्त्र जैसे बोलते हैं कि अभी कहाँ है, 10 मिनट बाद कहाँ रहेगा, या फिर 10 मिनट पहले कहाँ पे था. दिस इज व्हाट फिजिक्स डज. But then to think यार just because I am being able to solve equation of motion, उसमें भी हम लोग तो थ्री बॉडी प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व नहीं कर पाते एग्जैक्टली, वो तो अलग बात है. बट इफ वी हैव द एरोगेंस कि वी नो एवरीथिंग अबाउट ग्रेविटी, इट्स नॉट एक्चुअली ट्रू. सो
नहीं
वी
नहीं
हैव,
नहीं बिरजीत दा,
और फिजिक्स, और एक
यहाँ
पॉइंट
पर
बताता हूँ जहाँ पे मैं भटक गया, वो ये है कि फिजिक्स ओनली केयर अबाउट डुअलिज्म. मतलब ये जो फिजिकल वर्ल्ड है, फिजिकल वर्ल्ड की कुछ कुछ प्रॉपर्टीज होते हैं, जैसे लोकलिटी हो गया, कि जो भी फोर्सेस है वो लोकल बेसिस पे काम करेगा, इट्स नॉट लाइक एक्शन एट अ डिस्टेंस. दूसरा पॉइंट हो गया अपना ये फिजिकल डुअलिटी, कॉजलिटी जैसे हो गया कि एवरी कॉज शुड प्रिसीड द इफेक्ट. एक कॉज का जो सिमेट्री है उसके साथ इफेक्ट का सिमेट्री लगभग सेम ही होगा. कॉज और इफेक्ट, कॉज के जितने सेट ऑफ सिमेट्रीज है, इफेक्ट का उतना सेट ऑफ सिमेट्रीज होगा. सो इफ यू पंच ऑल ऑफ दीज थिंग्स, यू विल सी कि it basically describe a world which is spatio-temporal, and because it is spatio temporal, it is causal, so it is describing a dualistic world. तो डुअलिस्टिक वर्ल्ड से ऊपर जब जाना चाहोगे तब तुम फिजिक्स में सिंगुलरिटीज मिलेंगे. इट इज as simple as that, right?
हाँ, विजित दा मैं केवल एक उदाहरण दे रहा था ग्रेविटी का। जैसे मेरा बस यही पॉइंट था कि ग्रेविटी हैज़ एक्जिस्टेड। व्हाई इट हैज़ एक्जिस्टेड? ओके, दैट्स अ डिफरेंट क्वेश्चन टू बी आंसर्ड एंड वी कैन थिंक अबाउट इट। मैं कह रहा था कि ग्रेविटी का अस्तित्व रहा है, तो वो ज्ञान तो रहा ही है ना। अब हम उसको समझते कैसे हैं, उसको सॉल्व कैसे करते हैं, वो हमारी क्षमता पर निर्भर करता है, मानव क्षमता पर। पर ज्ञान तो है ही। मैं वही कह रहा था बस।
हाँ, सही बात है,
ऐसे
इसीलिए
मैं
तो.
ये नहीं कह रहा हूँ कि ग्रेविटी के बारे में हम मनुष्य जाति को या मानव जाति को सब कुछ पता है। मेरा वो बिंदु नहीं था।
नहीं नहीं, मैं आई एम नॉट एड्रेसिंग यू, आई एम सेइंग इन जनरल साइंस, बिकॉज इट हैज बीटेन द सो कॉल्ड रिलीजन, राइट, हिस्टोरिकली. तो साइंस, एटलीस्ट इन द वेस्ट, दे हैव दैट एरोगेंस कि एटलीस्ट वी आर बेटर देन लॉट ऑफ अदर ब्रांचेस, फॉर एग्जांपल रिलीजन और गॉड. वी नो मोर देन गॉड, फॉर एग्जांपल, राइट. ये एक एरोगेंस साइंस में दिखता है, एटलीस्ट वेस्ट में जो लोग, काफी सारे हमारे इधर भी एकेडमी में जो रहते हैं, उनको
क्योंकि
उनको ये गुरूर रहता है कुछ हद तक. तो मैं उसको एड्रेस कर रहा
क्यों
था.
क्योंकि अभी तक उन्होंने अब्राहमिक गॉड को ही देखा है ना। अभी तक उन्होंने
एग्जैक्टली.
धार्मिक गॉड का सामना नहीं किया है। जिस दिन
एग्जैक्टली.
करेंगे उस दिन एथिस्ट लोग बोलने लगेंगे कि अद्वैत वेदांत के बारे में सोचना चाहिए। वो एलेक्स ओकॉनर तो पीछे ही पड़ गया अद्वैत वेदांत के। बहुत
राइट.
बड़ा रैशनलिस्ट है वेस्ट का।
राइट.
तो
तो इसीलिए तो प्रकृति को, सी, हमारे लिए प्रकृति ही परमेश्वर है. आवर टेम्पल इज नेचर. हिंदुओं के लिए सबसे बड़ा टेम्पल, सबसे बड़ा मंदिर जो है, वो प्रकृति है. तो वो मतलब आप सोचो ना, मतलब आ, काफी सारा टाइम रहा है, एटलीस्ट मतलब मैं जिस रीजन से आता हूँ, मैं तो बोलता हूँ भूपेंद्र कि बांकुड़ा पुरुलिया जो रीजन है, वहाँ पे कुछ नहीं, मंदिर क्या होता है, एक पेड़ है, पेड़ के नीचे हाथी घोड़ा का वो टेराकोटा का हाथी घोड़ा रख दिया, फूल चढ़ा दिया, वही मंदिर है. पेड़ के नीचे वही मंदिर है, और उस पे वो धागा वागा बांध दिया थोड़ा सा जनेऊ वाला, मंदिर बन गया. तो इट्स हिंदुओं के लिए मंदिर इज लाइक एज सिंपल एज कीपिंग हाथी घोड़ा जस्ट बीनीथ a big banyan tree, or and then calling it temple, right, and continue doing puja there. और ये लोगों को समझ में नहीं आता यार, इसमें तो वो बड़े बड़े चूड़ा नहीं है, इतना बड़ा बड़ा जो चर्च का जितना बड़ा उसका क्या बोलते हैं, फसाड होता है, या फिर इतना बड़ा शिखर होता है, ये तो है नहीं. फिर ये लोग जी कैसे रहे हैं, मतलब ये लोग अट्रैक्ट क्यों नहीं हो रहे हमारे इतना सारा जो कारनामा कर रहे हैं, इतने बड़े बड़े चर्च बना दिए हैं, इतना बड़ा ताजमहल खड़ा कर दिया, फिर भी ये लोग कन्वर्ट नहीं हो रहे हैं. उनको समझ नहीं आता कि ये लोग जो मतलब दे डोंट केयर अबाउट सच बिग फसाड एंड एवरीथिंग. ऑल दे हैव कि ओके, दे बिलीव इन दिस नेचुरल मोरालिटी, जो जिससे वो लोग खुश है, तो उस हिसाब से वो लोग रख रहे हैं. मैं अभी भी बोल रहा हूँ, जैसे मैं तो व्हेन आई वाज थिंकिंग कि यार ये हिंदुइज्म तो जैसे थोड़ा बहुत, इट्स नॉट ए अर्बन रिलीजियन अनलाइक क्रिश्चियनिज्म, तो मतलब हिंदुइज्म को फिर लाए कैसे अर्बन स्फीयर में. देन आई लुक्ड इनटू द रिमोट विलेजेस एंड आई फाउंड माय आंसर कि यार हिंदुओं के लिए ठीक है, अपने अगर इधर टाउन में सिटीज में इतना मंदिर नहीं है, बड़े बड़े पेड़ लगाओ, बनाओ वहां पे, और वहां से मंदिर क्रिएट करो. इट्स नॉट ए बिग प्रॉब्लम फॉर हिंदूज. हिंदू को अगर दिख गया कि एक बड़ा सा पेड़ है, उसके नीचे ऐसे रखा हुआ है, पूजा किया, वो वहीं पे माथा टेक के जाएगा, उसको कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है इस बात पे.
ये और इसीलिए मैंने एक बात देखी है विजीता, कि हिंदू धर्म को समझने के लिए ना आवश्यक नहीं है कि आपको पुस्तक चाहिए। ठीक है,
एग्जैक्टली.
पुस्तक या
इट
ग्रंथ।
इज नेचुरल
आप
मोरालिटी, ये
यदि अच्छे
अंदर से
से
आता है.
अपने आसपास का वातावरण भी थोड़ा सा ध्यान से उसको ऑब्जर्व करेंगे ना, आप बहुत कुछ हिंदू धर्म के बारे में सीख जाएंगे।
बिल्कुल. As I said, कि it is natural, spontaneous morality, unlike external, scriptural, synthetic morality invented by the Abrahamics. It is natural moral. मन की बात सुनो, जो बार बार कहता है ना, मन की बात सुनो, दिल की बात सुनो, वो हिंदुइज्म है. वहां से अगर कोई श्रद्धा आ रहा है किसी के लिए, that is genuine, you have to count it as a genuine expression of your of your atman. And that is the Hindu morality यार. It is natural morality. और वहाँ फिर जो सोसाइटी बनता है, दैट इज नेचुरल सोसाइटी. वहाँ से जो कन्वेंशन बनता है, दोज आर नेचुरल कन्वेंशन, नेचुरल ट्रेडिशंस. और फिर अब्राहमिज्म आके उसको तोड़ता है. दे नो कि दे हैव टू डिसरप्ट this continuum of belief, faith, civilizational value, order. They need to disrupt. उसके लिए हिस्ट्री पहले लाइब्रेरी जलाते हैं, हिस्ट्री बुक खत्म करते हैं, फिर एक सुप्रीम कोर्ट को क्रिएट करते हैं जहाँ से बोलते हैं खाप पंचायत नहीं चलेगा, फिर अपना कोई रूल ऊपर से नीचे लगाते हैं, टॉप डाउन एजेंडा लगाते हैं. तो इसी तरह से होता है. यहाँ पे वैशाली दी लिख रहे हैं कि वेस्टर्न अब्राहमिक गॉड से तो डेफिनेटली साइंस बेटर है. हाँ बेटर है, बिकॉज साइंस डील विद प्रकृति, वही तो बोल रहा हूँ. साइंस साइंस का भी तो वही काम है ना कि प्रकृति में जो चल रहा है उसको. साइंस इज हैज अ पेगन ओरिजिन, यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड. मतलब अब्राहमिक रिलीजियंस आर ऑलवेज एट अनईज विद साइंस, बिकॉज साइंस हैज दैट पेगन नेचर विद इन इटसेल्फ, कि मैं प्रकृति में क्या चल रहा है उसको जानूंगा मैं. सो दैट्स व्हाई साइंस इज वेरी मच ए पेगन नॉलेज. ठीक है. आप सोचो ना, आपको जैसे हर्बल साइंस हो गया, हर्बल मेडिसिन मेडिसिन हो गया, ये अब्राहमिज्म हमेशा इसको इसको बोला है कि इसको त्याग किया है. दे हैव अबंडन्ड एंड दे हैव डिसमिस्ड एंड क्या बोलते हैं आजकल, कैंसल्ड हर्बल मेडिसिन, जो कि एक नेचुरल साइंटिफिक नॉलेज है. Another disease of Western history called buildings. What if nature has engulfed स्ट्रक्चर शुड. हाँ, जैसे हो रहा है ना यूरोप में. अभी यूरोप में ये लोग जो भी इमिग्रेशन के बावजूद, मतलब लिए जितना ये सब, दे हैव गिवन एंट्रेंस टू सो मेनी आउटसाइडर्स फ्रॉम मिडिल ईस्ट. नाउ दे आर बर्निंग द चर्चेस. ठीक है, वो चर्च बर्न हो रहा है, चर्च बर्न हो रहा है, तो अब रहेगा क्या, मतलब व्हाट इज देयर टू. और यूरोपियन को खास करके अभी फर्क भी नहीं पड़ता, बिकॉज दे नो दिस इज अ वाइल्ड रिलीजन और व्हाट एवर सुपरस्टिशंस. तो इससे अगर छुटकारा मिल जाए तो बेटर रहेगा. आप देखो नीदरलैंड में जाओगे आप, एक तो ये तो यूएस में भी परंपरा है, मैं तो देख चुका हूँ कि चर्च, अब वो जो भी चर्च इज बीइंग सोल्ड ना, उसको वो बियर वाले खरीद के वहाँ पे ब्रीवरी बनाते हैं. इट इज अ वेरी कॉमन नॉर्म कि वहाँ पे ब्रीवरी बनाओ. आप एम्स्टर्डम में चले जाओ, ऑल द ब्रोथेल दे विल, यू विल फाइंड जस्ट ऑपोजिट और बिसाइड चर्चेस. काफी टाइम चर्च को खरीद के ब्रोथेल बनाते हैं. कहाँ से आ रहा है ये वहीं से आ रहा है ना कि वो अंदर से वो घिन आना एक स्ट्रक्चर के लिए, एक एक वैल्यूज के लिए, वहां से आ रहा है. और ये एक्चुअली अब्राहमिज्म ने क्रिएट किया है सोसाइटी में.
ओके.
एक
हमने
हम्म,
या गो हेड बोल बोलो.
एक पॉइंट था मेरा बीजीता, मैंने एक प्रश्न किया था और ये मेरे मन में आया था कि स्टार्ट में some people will say that your view is prone to naturalistic fallacy. What do you think is the solution? अब naturalistic fallacy जिसको थोड़ा समझ में ना आए मैं उसको समझा दूं कि जैसे नेचर में तो वायलेंस भी है, जैसे ह्यूमन नेचर में तो पहले महिलाओं के साथ दुष्कर्म करना भी था कि हम एक ट्राइब दूसरे ट्राइब के विरुद्ध चले जाए तो दूसरी ट्राइब की महिलाओं के साथ अ, अत्याचार करना. तो यदि हम नेचुरल मोरालिटी में बहुत ज़्यादा चले गए और अ, हमने अपने नेचुरलिस्टिक इंस्टिंक्ट्स को चैलेंज नहीं किया, तो वोंट दैट लीड टू अनदर प्रॉब्लम?
नहीं, अब वायलेंस एक पॉइंट है कि ये फैलेसी और वायलेंस. तो पहली बात, ये जो लड़कियों को उठाना या फिर ये सब करना, लड़कियों को स्लेव बनाना, दिस इज अब्राहमिक मोरालिटी बाय द वे. इट इज स्क्रिप्चर, मतलब इसको स्क्रिप्चर में रखा गया, फिर इसको एक डिवाइन सॉर्ट ऑफ कमांडमेंट बनाया गया ओनली इन अब्राहमिज्म. ये जुडाइज्म में था, वहां से क्रिश्चियनिज्म आया, वहां से इस्लाम में आया. ठीक है. सो इट इज अब्राहमिक मोरालिटी. नाउ टॉकिंग अबाउट वायलेंस. वायलेंस, सी नेचर में तो वायलेंस है भाई. वायलेंस इज पार्ट ऑफ नेचर. मतलब आप देखो जिस हिसाब से, इफ यू, मतलब फ्रॉम द पर्सपेक्टिव that you try to express or you try to interpret all the natural, many of the natural phenomena. आप अगर whenever you see a star burning, right, and giving energy, वो तो एक violent phenomena है. अगर सोसाइटी में आओ फिर I would go as far as saying कि all these uh, various institutions, they are expression of violence. Just imagine marriage, um, state. These are actually, it is the fact कि human beings have tried so many things over time in the history, and then something worked and they stayed with us in a very natural way. Just like any argument, right? ये जो रोमन ग्रेको रोमन फिलोसोफर्स थे उनका भी ये कहना था कि ठीक है, हम लोग चीजों पे बात करते हैं, डायलेक्टिक जिसे बोलते हैं, वहां से जो चीज निकल के आएगा वी विल एक्सेप्ट इट, और उस पे तर्क वितर्क वितंडा होता रहेगा। वहां से जो पॉइंट उठा के हम लोग ला सकते हैं, उसी को हम लोग नेचुरल मोरालिटी बोलेंगे। और दे सेड कि नेचुरल मोरालिटी समथिंग जो अंदर से आएगा, बट हमें डायलेक्टिक के थ्रू उसको डिस्कस करके फिर वी कैन सॉर्ट ऑफ वी कैन इनैक्ट इट इन द सोसाइटी। तो ये बात तो होता रहता है, मतलब यू कैन नॉट इग्नोर वायलेंस फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, एंड सेकेंडली ऑल दीज फीचर्स, राइट? कोई भी अगर चीज हो उसको यू कैन डिस्कस इट आउट, राइट? तो उस हिसाब से मैं बोलूँगा कि नेचरिस्टिक फैलेसी नहीं है, नेचर अपने आप रिवील होता है। बट अगर कोई पॉइंट पे अगर कॉन्टेंशन है, देन यूज द ह्यूमन इंटेलेक्चुअल ना टू कम अप विद द प्रॉपर इंटरप्रिटेशन और प्रॉपर नैरेटिव विच इज इन अकॉर्डेंस विद द नेचर। साइंस तो उसी तरह से
Okay.
काम करता है।
One more thing, Vijitda, I think this is a very important point. Actually, Mr. Ananda Raghunathan, correct, he is a biologist in JNU. He spoke very interesting in one of his lectures, one of his talks, that this Darwinian theory of evolution has actually ignored a very important part, is that empathy in the evolved human beings, mammals specifically, correct? So this empathy, correct? So we see violence as one spectrum of our existence, and also we see empathy for another living being. We see in chimps, we see in cats, dogs, animals who are doesn't have the faculty that we have, but that also part of our evolution. So it is not only violence is reality of our lives, but also empathy for another living being also is a part of that evolution itself. So you cannot actually negate that part as well. Where we are today as human beings, okay, our evolution, it is a combination, a culmination of multiple factors, including human empathy, love, emotion, okay, affection, and violence. So it's all milieu which has created this, or not we only highlight violence as the only form of evolution that we have seen. So it's also a kind of a like
True.
disingenuous to actually say that it only violence exists only if you follow your nature, then you would only do violence. No, if you follow your nature, you also have empathy for another living being. That's also part of our who we are. So why
It is
we
nature,
negate that?
exactly. It is nature. As
Correct.
simple as that, yes.
So whenever somebody gives an that argument, so we need to counter that. Okay, does only violence exist? Does empathy for another human being doesn't exist as part of our morality, of our natural instincts? They do exist. So we
So
can't just pick and
my
choose to
question
suit
here
our own
would be,
argument. Go ahead. Go ahead.
my question here would be, then if we go by the framework of natural morality, then let's say you're talking about empathy and violence, then what should be the right thing to do, or what, or on what basis will it be decided that this is the right thing to do? Because someone will say violence is right, might is right. Some people will say no, we should have empathy, we should not do violence. So on what basis should we decide whether we want to do violence or not do violence?
Again, correct. That's the problem of your Abrahamic mindset, black and white, good and evil. Correct. Empathy for another human being is as much a reality as I will I will use violence, I will commit violence to actually protect my family. They both exist. You cannot actually like do this binary. That's a problem, correct? If somebody is attacking my family, I will use violence to defend my family, correct?
Spontaneous morality. Okay, that
Exactly.
is the answer.
Hmm.
Spontaneous
Yeah,
morality
okay.
is the natural morality.
But my question is, but we all know, right, that not necessarily all violence is bad, but there is something called violence done for the wrong thing. That is to uh, kill innocent people or to misbehave with women, innocent women. And there is violence done for the right thing, that is protecting your family from other violent people or whatever. So, how do we distinguish between the right and the wrong here? That was my question.
So you have dharma, correct? You have dharma, the codes of dharma. You have dharma shastras, which actually give you the guidelines. Okay, when you should, correct? In Gita, correct? In Gita, Bhagavan Krishna says that. Okay, Arjuna, go and fight for your own clan, because that is your dharma. That is the righteous violence that
हाँ,
we have to
यहाँ पे
commit
एक
to
पॉइंट
actually
जो
protect
आता है,
dharma.
राइट, ऑनर आता है यहाँ पे, ऑनर एंड राइटियसनेस. सो बेसिकली नाउ यू आर आस्किंग अ वेरी फंडामेंटल क्वेश्चन कि अगर स्पॉन्टेनियस मोरालिटी है, हाउ डू आई नो कि यार मैं एक बच्चे को मार दिया, ये मेरे स्पॉन्टेनियस मोरालिटी के अंदर आता है कि नहीं. मतलब इज देयर अ वे आई कैन अंडरस्टैंड अबाउट माई सेल्फ कि आई एम बीइंग काइंड और आई एम बीइंग क्रूअल. लाइक हाउ टू इवेल्युएट माई सेल्फ. अगर मेरा स्पॉन्टे मे बी द मोरालिटी दैट आई एम काउंटिंग एज स्पॉन्टेनियस मोरालिटी, मे बी दे आर बीइंग ड्रिवन बाय द एनवायरनमेंट एंड द इंस्टेंस एंड द सिचुएशन, राइट. वहां पे फिर आ जाता है, फिर ऑनर वाला बात आ जाता है कि जो जो चीज हीनता लाती है, जो चीज भूमा मतलब द ग्रेटर बीइंग और द ग्रेटर एग्जिस्टेंस, जो चीज मतलब इफ there is a morality that diminishes and that doesn't take you to bhuma, maybe that is not the right morality. अगर कोई बच्चे को मार के या जख्म करके तुम्हें भूमा नहीं मिल रहा है, इफ इट इज, अगर खुद के आंखों में छोट मतलब थोड़ा सा भी छोटा हो गया, फिर वो शायद दैट इज नॉट अ गुड, दैट इज नॉट अ स्पॉन्टेनियस गुड मोरालिटी, सो टू से. दिस इज वन. सो इसीलिए काफी टाइम बोला जाता है, एक मेरु तंत्र में एक बुक है जहाँ पे फिर हिंदू को इस तरह से डिफाइन किया गया है कि हु इज ए हिंदू. और ये बुक मिलता है, मेरु तंत्रम को कोट किया गया है, एक संस्कृत का एक डिक्शनरी बनाया गया था जिसका नाम था शब्दकल्प द्रुम या शब्दकल्प तरु. ये राधाकांत देव ने लिखा था. एंड देन देयर ही डिफाइंड हिंदू फ्रॉम दिस शास्त्र, राइट. Where it is, Hindu is defined in Sabdakalpataru as हिनानी गुनानी दुष्यति इति हिंदू. मतलब हिनानी दुष्यति इति हिंदू मतलब जो हीन गुण को जो घृणा कर अभोर करता है, वन हु अभोर्स द हीन क्वालिटी, द इंफीरियर क्वालिटीज, इज ए हिंदू. ये फिर मेरु तंत्र में कौन किसको समझा रहा है? पार्वती पूछती है शिवा से कि हु इज द हिंदू. फिर वहां पे बेसिकली दिस ए बुद्धिस्ट टेक्स्ट बाय द वे. तो वहां पे फिर शिव जी रिस्पॉन्ड करते हैं कि हिनानी गुनानी दुष्यति इति हिंदू. जो हिण गुण को जो अडॉप्ट कर लेता है, जो अडॉप्ट नहीं करता है एट एनी पॉइंट, वो हिंदू है. So I think when you ask कि भाई how to define spontaneous morality, or how to understand कि this is a good quality, what I have done is actually moral, then probably हमको भूमा का सहारा लेना पड़ेगा कि if I am not diminished before my own eyes by doing some activity or by performing some action, then probably that's not a, if I am not diminished, then it is probably a good spontaneous morality. If I am being diminished in my own eyes, then probably I have to ask again कि whether I am doing a good thing or bad thing. ये फिर उस लेवल की फंडामेंटल तक जाता है.
By the way, for the audience, if someone wants to understand the position of Samrakshak ji, this is basically the classic case of is-ought problem, which was first summarized by David Hume in his book called A Treatise of Human Nature. So over there, he talks about how moral philosophers often shift imperceptibly from descriptive statements about what is the case to prescriptive statements about what ought to be the case. So this is also called Hume's law or Hume's guillotine as well. What the commentator Abhay and also Samrakshak ji was talking about. Just for audience, I said it.
Okay. So I think anybody has anything else to say before? I think we have covered almost everything that was there. But we also taken the
I had
questions and the
something to say.
comments as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Bijidda, from where would you like to start the discussion on uh, Western political theory? That what
वेस्टर्न
that what
वेस्टर्न पॉलिटिकल थियरी ये तो इसी में डिस्कस कर रहे हैं मतलब हम वेस्टर्न पॉलिटिकल थियरी इज बेसिकली इट स्टार्ट्स विद दिस जुडाइज्म एंड क्रिश्चियनिज्म राइट सो वेस्टर्न पॉलिटिकल थियरी तो हमने लगभग डिस्कस कर लिया है
no no no
अभी
no
तो
no
इंडियन
not that not
Uh,
that one.
from Greek also you discussed, right?
Yeah that's the one. Yeah, can we do that?
कौन सा मुझे समझ में नहीं आया क्या हुआ
From Greek
So from the Greek,
tradition also we can take up some political theory because
अच्छा
Plato,
अच्छा अच्छा
Socrates,
ओ आई सी सो द क्लासिकल
yeah,
नॉट कैनोनिकल बट द क्लासिकल वेस्टर्न कॉन्स्ट्रक्ट ऑफ पॉलिटिकल
yeah,
थियरी
yeah.
हाँ
basically
यार वो
ancient
एक्चुअली
Greece,
कर सकते हैं प्लेटोज
their
रिपब्लिक
political
एंड ऑल
theory,
दोस
and
बुक्स
Rome also, because Rome
वो
also had
करेंगे ठीक
quite
है
a
इसी
lot of
इसी में रखेंगे
political
फिर इसी में रखेंगे
theory. Yeah.
राइट
Because what
वो
has
करेंगे
happened now, Bijitha, I've seen some of the right wingers in Britain who are also racists. They like to quote Aristotle a lot right now to suggest that they were the epitome of wisdom and so on. So maybe we could discuss from there as well.
एग्जैक्टली एग्जैक्टली उनकी क्या बोलते हैं हेगड़ियां निकालनी होगी नहीं ये डी एब्रामाइजेशन इज डीकोलोनाइजेशन इसी लेक्चर को तो नेक्स्ट लेक्चर इसको नेक्स्ट एपिसोड में भी कंटिन्यू करेंगे क्योंकि बहुत कुछ रहना मतलब बोलना रह गया अभी तो नेक्स्ट भी इसी पे करेंगे 1-1.5 घंटे का और लगेगा मिनिमम
True, like
फिर आई थिंक
yeah, like Bijitha,
बताओ
I was saying ki, so like can we make a certain progression ki like जैसे Nenar, I think you can comment on it as well ki
Yeah.
first
So
we start with
what I was thinking, so I think what Rishi is meaning to say is that we start with Greek and Roman thing, and we merge it into how Constantine and the Christians began taking over the state and applying their political theory.
ओके
That will make
राइट
sense, right?
absolutely.
राइट राइट या वो करते हैं इट विल बी
Hmm.
गुड पॉइंट राइट 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 ये भी करते हैं ये भी रखते हैं
Because basically,
Uh,
they first he overtook the existing state, right? In the
नॉट
Greek
ओनली
and
दैट
the
यार
Roman.
जब पोस्ट क्या बोलते हैं एनलाइटेनमेंट जो एनलाइटेनमेंट या रेनेसां फिलोसोफर जो थे वो भी बेसिकली वहीं से लिए
Aha,
थे
Hmm,
आइडिया उठाए थे
Aristotle
hmm.
and even
Like
Aquinas and all Catholic
राइट
philosophers,
राइट
they were basically all borrowing Aristotle's books.
एग्जैक्टली
and then we can maybe
and
go
then
Nenar can speak on it much more like John Locke, Montesquieu, Rousseau, and then till Marx.
राइट
That
Maybe
is still
can.
later, but yeah, first we have to cover Greek,
यार फिर
Rome,
एक्चुअली उसी पे
and
अलग लेक्चर सीरीज
Christianization.
बन सकता है वेस्टर्न पॉलिटिकल थियरी
Yeah,
and
from
then
there
we
then we
can
can
end with
counter.
communism. That is, what were the
नो
roots of
विल एंड विद
communism?
डोनाल्ड ट्रम्प ग्रॉयपरिज्म
Yeah, Donald Trump. That's also
No,
possible.
you can end with there is still ideologies going on. Like you heard of Peter Thiel, Curtis Yarvin, and all. They have all the kind of Western ideologies going on.
हाँ वो तो न्यो न्यो
Yeah,
आई डोंट नो न्यो फैसिज्म या टेक टेक फैसिज्म जिसे बोलते हैं टेक्नो फैसिज्म
yeah,
Tech.
yeah.
No, no. It's called
Basically.
techno
Dada,
feudalism.
you you can
Neo-feudalism.
do something to piss your public off. That is, you start talking about libertarianism. It's going to
Oh,
really hurt some people here.
राइट हाँ वो कवर कर सकते हैं एक्चुअली उसका अलग सीरीज बना सकते हैं यार हम लोग तो बेसिकली यहाँ पे एक दो लेक्चर उस पे रखेंगे फिर एक लेक्चर सीरीज उसके बेसिस पे फिर बना क्योंकि इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थियोरी तो फिर क्रिश्चियनिज्म का जो लेक्चर किया हमने उसी से ये इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थियोरी निकला फिर क्योंकि योया का जो कमेंट था उसको उसके साथ हम लोग पंच कर रहे हैं क्रिश्चियनिज्म के तो ये निकल रहा है अब्राहमिक हिस्ट्री
true,
सेंट्रिसिटी ये सब जो नैरेटिव है फिर अब यहाँ
true.
से फिर इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थियरी जब बना देंगे वहां से फिर जज करेंगे वेस्टर्न पॉलिटिकल थियरी को तो फिर और आसान हो जाएगा चीजों को
Yep.
तो यहाँ पे एक दो एपिसोड रखेंगे फिर उसके बेसिस पे तीसरा लेक्चर सीरीज बना देते हैं मजा आएगा एंड देन
I
आई एम
think this
रिक्वेस्टिंग यू
will be
गाइस
a
कि
very good.
हाँ लेक्चर सीरीज
Uh,
क्योंकि चल रहा है ना तो हम लोग इसी के बेसिस पे बुक लिख सकते हैं मैं तो
this will
क्रिश्चियनिज्म वाला जो है हाँ
this will be a very good imitation of. It's not really imitation, but a great manifestation of our tradition of Purva Paksha and Uttar Paksha.
हाँ
That is,
हाँ
we
हाँ
are doing a Purva Paksha of Western political theory, and then we are coming up with our response and giving our
राइट
perspective on that.
राइट मजा आएगा बहुत
Absolutely.
तो हम लोग फिर सब मिलके ना इसको इसको बुक का एक आकार दे सकते हैं इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थियरी
Hmm.
क्योंकि इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थियरी इसी लेक्चर सीरीज से ही मैं बुक लिखूंगा और फिर उसी से वेस्टर्न पॉलिटिकल थियरी का भी एक बुक तो हम सब मिलके निकाल सकते हैं एक्चुअली एक दो बुक
True, true. I mean, today we set the framework, and then we can take it up
एग्जैक्टली
from here.
राइट
But it's also such a vast topic, because earlier also
Oh
people
yeah.
have written on it. Because, like P.V. Kande is there. He writes History of Dharma Shastras. In the entire book, there um, in 5 volumes of his work, there are so many references to how a political system is supposed to work according to
हाँ
Dharma
तो उनको
Shastras.
कोट करेंगे ना उनको कोट करेंगे उनको रेफरेंस में रखेंगे
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल
ऐसी बात
करेंगे.
नहीं है
Absolutely.
Okay, so Vijita, shall we end our session today?
हाँ इफ नो वन हैज एनी कमेंट तो फिर आज करते हैं फिर कल कल सैटरडे कल बैठना है क्या सबको कल सब लोग फ्री हैं तो कल भी बैठ
Ah,
सकते हैं
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's. Yeah. I think.
ये मजेदार टॉपिक होगा ये
Hmm,
मजे
hmm, hmm.
बहुत सही होने वाला है आई थिंक वी ऑल विल एंजॉय दिस टॉपिक एक्चुअली
Vijita, can you set a theme just like today you put DeAbrahamization is called decolonization. Tomorrow let's set a theme which
नहीं
is
इसी पे कंटिन्यू
basically
करेंगे थीम में फिर लिख के मैं हम लोग पोस्ट कर देते हैं
no,
अ,
I'm saying our theme tomorrow should be maybe more about intrinsic, about
मैं बता देता
discussing
हूँ
our
मैंने
Indian
पॉइंट लिख के
system.
रखा था हाँ मैं
Hmm.
कुछ कुछ पॉइंट लिख के रखा था क्योंकि ये खत्म नहीं
Okay.
हुआ
Okay,
By the
okay.
way,
ये थोड़ा
I had a question. Maybe you all can comment on it. So, while discussing Indian political thought, can we reference political thoughts rising from 19th century, uh, like the thoughts of Rishi Aurobindo? What was his political thought versus Jayaprakash Narayan
हाँ
versus
ये सारा
Netaji
चलेगा
versus Gandhi?
Savarkar and all
राइट
this. Yeah, of course.
राइट
Savarkar,
राइट
yeah.
Yeah, we have in the correct the thumbnail we have put the all the political what is say political leader like political thought leaders of our pre-independence
राइट ये तो
and
करेंगे
post-independence
पोस्ट
era.
इंडिपेंडेंस वाला भी करेंगे ना पोस्ट इंडिपेंडेंस में
Hmm.
जैसे
Yes.
आई डोंट नो हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू हैव माय बुक हिस्ट्री ऑफ हिंदू मिस हिंदू जेनोसाइड वहां पे मैंने फिर ये जो पंचमक्कार थ्योरी था संदीप देव का उसको मैंने एक्सटेंड किया था
Yeah, yeah.
षोडश शत्रु में 6 एनिमीज
Okay.
जिसमें जिसमें आता है मुल्ला मुफ्ती
Missionary.
अशरफ मिशनरी मार्क्सिस्ट मीडिया द लुटियंस फिर मिलॉर्ड्स
Macaulay
और
Putra.
और मैकलॉयलिज्म, यस। तो ये 6 में साढ़े शत्रु बोला है कि हिंदूज हैव 6 एनिमीज विद इन, काम, क्रोध, मत, लोभ, मोह, मात्सर्य, एंड 6 एनिमीज विदाउट, जो बाहर का। तो वो थियोरी भी थोड़ा बहुत डिस्कस करेंगे। जैसे इंडियन जुडिशियरी, इट इज बेसिकली कंटिन्यूइंग सिंस द टाइम ऑफ शरिया, है, क्योंकि ब्रिटिश ने जब राज करना चालू किया, एंड आई एम रीडिंग दिस, दे आर सेइंग कि यार शरिया को थोड़ा इधर उधर चेंज करके इसको फिर इंडियन लॉ का आकार दे देते हैं। दे आर राइटिंग इट, इट्स इन देयर राइटिंग, मैं क्या करूँ अब। ये शरिया बहुत ब्रूटल है, इतना ब्रूटल नहीं रखते हैं, बट थोड़ा बहुत वही करते हैं। तो ये लोग जो मनुस्मृति मनुस्मृति करते हैं, मनुस्मृति का कोई, दे आर नॉट इवन एक्नॉलेजिंग द ब्रिटिश कि मनुस्मृति से चीजें को चलाना होगा। दे आर नॉट सेइंग एनीथिंग लाइक दैट। तो क्योंकि
They took over
जुडिशियरी
from
इज अ
Mughal
कंटिन्यूएशन ऑफ दैट
administration only.
शरीयत। हम्म। तो फिर वही ना, फिर वही एक हिस्ट्रियोसेंट्रिक मोरल हम पे इम्पोज किया गया, एक सबवर्टेड मोरल इम्पोज किया गया टॉप डाउन। तो उसका जो असर पड़ा, फिर बाकी जो जितने भी है,
अब
मार्क्सिज्म हो गया, ये हो गया, उसका असर जो पड़ा हमारे
अब दादा
सोसाइटी
के
में।
पीछे काले कोटधारी वाले लोग आने वाले
नहीं, क्यों
आएंगे
No,
आएंगे?
आएंगे।
no, no.
आने की मतलब नहीं बनता ना। मैं हाँ एग्जैक्टली, जस्ट इमेजिन सुप्रीम कोर्ट वाज नॉट देयर यार व्हेन हिंदूज वर देयर। तो तुम भाई बीच में कहाँ से आ गए हो? ये
चिल्लाते
कोर्ट
हुए
बीच में
आएंगे,
आया कहाँ से?
कॉन्टेम्प्ट कर
ये
दिया।
जो हाँ, ये बीच में कहाँ से आ गया यार? ये तो समझ में नहीं आता हमें कि इनिशियली तो हिंदूज थे, और ऐसा नहीं है तुम हिंदू वैल्यूज पे चीजों को बनाए हो। तो ये सब डिस्कस करेंगे हम लोग। तो हाँ, ये सब में सारा कुछ आ जाएगा आई गेस।
इसमें तो जो हम लोग बात कर रहे थे ना, धर्म राज्यम या हिंदू राज्य बनाना है, वो भी आ जाएगा आई गेस।
हाँ हाँ, बट
कि हमारे
सेंट्रिस्ट जो
राज्य का
जो
स्ट्रक्चर
जो
क्या होना
सेंट्रल
चाहिए।
मैसेज है, सेंट्रल मैसेज यही रहेगा। सेंट्रल मैसेज यही रहेगा कि डी अब्रामाइजेशन इज डी कॉलोनाइजेशन। हमें डी कॉलोनाइज करना होगा, हमें एक इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थियरी ऐसा लाना होगा विच विल बी डीकोलोनाइज्ड, एंड इट कैन ओनली बी डीकोलोनाइज्ड ओनली इफ इट इज डीअब्रामाइज्ड। मतलब मैंने ये नैरेटिव सोच के रखा है, तो दिमाग में ये लेके मैं चलूंगा फिर।
Absolutely. Yeah, so we can move on with that, I guess, tomorrow. Uh,
So tomorrow
हाँ,
we
कल
again
will
we will
बैठना
start.
कल
start
कल
around
बैठना।
around 9:30 we will start,
Hmm.
and then we will continue. There's one more podcast coming. There are two podcasts which are coming, one in Japan and one on Germany this weekend.
Wow.
And
Wow.
also, I'm going to read the book, this book, Fractal Mandala, the ancient history of India. So I'm going to read this book in the afternoon. So you can join then as well. So thank you. Dhanyavad sabko for joining and see you tomorrow. Jai Shri Ram, Vande Mataram.
थैंक यू, वंदे
Jai
मातरम।
Shri Ram.
जय श्री राम,
Jai Shri
वंदे
Ram.
मातरम।